Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes. This day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Oh, 1 second, guys. 1 second. 1 second. I messed up something. Okay, give me 1 minute. Okay, I didn't have my audio right. I didn't turn on my mixing board. So everything should be good now. Let me know. I didn't have my camera on right. I didn't have my mixing board on right. And then I realized it at the last moment. And thank you for the Spanish there, H. Reardon. You probably don't know, but I'm absolutely in love with the Spanish language. When I have time, I am going to learn it better. But I have one expression that I think is very apropos to this situation, which is el caro entonado todos son caminos. Spanish speakers will know what that means. It roughly, it literally translates into to a crazy car, everything is a road. But what it means is to scrupulous and corrupt people, everything is a means to an end. It's basically about Machiavellianism. So el caro entonado todos son caminos. I think that has everything to do with the LNC. So I wonder if there is any Spanish speakers in there who are like, wow, I haven't heard that expression in a long time. It's my favorite Spanish expression. Unfortunately, I have had way too much opportunity to use it in my life. This is going to be a major stream. probably long. I don't know. I've got plenty of beverages. I'm going to dispense with trying to dispense quickly with the formalities. Again, since I've been accused, and we're going to go over some of these accusations of just being a shameless grifter, I am asking for you to become a patron. I need one more $10 a month patron to meet my goal. Now, tomorrow, I start a new job. I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know if I'm going to stay. I'm at a point in my life where if I don't like something, I'm going to quit. But because of that allows me to free up the income I make from the show to invest towards the LP, my activism, and my campaign. So if you become a patron, know that you are now not just simply paying my bills, which was very nice, but you are helping me get reelected. And super chats as well are always welcome. Now, and down in the bottom, Bitcoin, other altcoins, other ways you can support me. And I will gladly accept things from my Amazon wish list as consolations for my pain. All right. Oh, and I wanted to show you something cool. This has absolutely nothing to do with supporting me. It's just funny. I'm going to stand up here. Excuse me, I'm not wearing a bra today. I don't think you'll be able to tell, but in case you can tell, I don't care. This is braless day. But check out this shirt. Bird watching goes both ways. Birds aren't real, baby. It's one of my favorite shirts. And thank you so much, Daniel 3. We're going to get into my campaign. That's going to be part of this show later. I'm just trying to make sure I do all of the preliminaries. And everyone, Daniel 3, Biblical Anarchy is one of my sponsors, my advertisers. Please go and subscribe to his show. And I'm also going to give a free advertisement here. O'Donnell for Liberty. It's the show by Justin O'Donnell. I've been binge watching it lately. It's excellent. Go watch it. Justin O'Donnell and I have a very interesting history, and I love these kinds of histories. We were friends, then enemies, then friends again. And you want to know what's up. And I think that shows a lot of, and thank you, Julian, so much for your super chat. I'm going to be thanking everyone personally. Thank you. And thank you, Christina. I never see you in my streams. Girl, you got to come visit me here, please. It's been such a long time. For those of you who don't know, Christina and I, how far back do we go? We met in 93, was it? Or was it 2003? I think it was 93. Oh my goodness, it's been a very, very long time. Christina is one of my friends from decades and decades and decades ago. She knew me before I was political. Her now ex, who's a bastard like my ex, and I used to own a theology debate forum together. And we've both since ditched the horrible husbands, but kept each other as friends. And she's one of the few people I know who doesn't have a mean bone in her body. I hope I'm not embarrassing you with all the compliments, Christina. Anything else? I don't think there's any other preliminaries that I need to do. I'm now going to extend the invitation that I extended on Facebook. That is, anyone who has something they want to say about this issue, about this situation. As long as it's, listen, it doesn't even have to be particularly helpful. If you want to vent, you can send me, I'm going to stick up Facebook. You can send me a private message and I will send you a link to come on. Here's the only condition. If you are critical, you can be critical of me. You just can't dox me and you can't be abusive. If you want to cuss, you have to give a super chat because I'm trying to keep this stream monetized. I am going to try not to curse myself. But if guests I bring on curse and ruin my monetization for YouTube ads, because this will be a long stream, you got to help me out. But if But it doesn't cost to come on, only if you want to cuss, okay? And if I screw up and cuss, then my bad. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try. I might not succeed because I'm very angry. I'm very angry and I'm very hurt. But let's see. I extended this invitation also to the 11 Alan C. cowards. Do you think any of them will show up? No. They won't. But I'll bring them on if they do. You bet your sweet booty that I will bring them on if they do. And again, members, if you want to vent, I'll bring you on. You don't have to. Again, I'll put comments up from on the screen. I want this show to be very, very interactive. Now, I only read the JC decisions once. I will, so it was enough to give me an initial opinion that they sucked, but not enough for me to critically examine them, to examine my own conscience, to see if any of them had merit. Because I will concede if there's merit. For instance, I had to apologize for something today, and I'm going to apologize for it again publicly. I had, on Twitter, a few months ago, tagged Spike Cohen in a comment and asked him if he would condemn what happened to me. And I did not get a response. I took his silence as cowardice, rather than maybe I should PM him. And my taking his silence as cowardice was cowardice on my part. You want to know why? Because I was scared that he wouldn't condemn what happened to me, and I didn't want to lose him as a friend. But it turned out he never saw my ask. And it turned out that he has condemned what happened to me, and I never saw it because we're both very busy. And it was childish of me not to go to him personally. I've already apologized to him directly, but I'm apologizing to him again here because I own up to my mistakes. Not that this makes it right, but my mistake to him was out of fear because I'm so fond of him, and it would have broken my heart. I'm tearing up. Don't want it to be this kind of show. It would have broken my heart to lose his friendship. But I was wrong, and I apologize. Without reservation and excuse, I was wrong. Okay. Now, with that example out of the way, there might be some things in the JC opinion that I will concede. And thank you. I want to put this up on the screen. Thank you so much, Biblical Anarchy. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I will, somebody had already asked also for their support to go to the Pink Whistles. They shall. And I'm bringing up the whole Spike thing because I really am embarrassed that I did that. That's not like me. So I just wanted to make sure that I did this publicly. I told him I would do it publicly on my show, and I keep my word. I'm not perfect. I am not perfect by any means. Let me think of what else. All of the JC opinions are now up on Lpedia. And I got a compliment today that meant a lot to me. I don't know if you guys know Brian Holtz. Brian Holtz is also an Libertarian Party history enthusiast like me. Other than that, we have very little in common. He is a Prague. He helped engineer, if I remember correctly, the Portland massacre. But he is a person of integrity, even though we don't agree. And the compliment I got from him today is he thanked me for keeping the Lpedia page on my suspension neutral or as neutral. Listen, nothing's ever completely neutral, is it? But he thanked me for trying to keep it neutral. Now, there are more things on that page in support of me than against me, only because there was more support of me than against me. But I did put every single critical thing about me that was sent to the JC up there. And if people alert me to critical videos, I will link them there. Lpedia is not intended to be propaganda. It's just intended to be facts. But Mike, yeah, Holtz and I have always been very friendly because of our mutual love of LP history. The link's not working. The link, have you checked recently? I put the placeholder up first because I was having problems. Let me check that right now. Let me check that right now because I'll fix it if it's not. 1 second. Because I did put a placeholder up while I was trying to find where I filed the decision. So I'm going to pull up Lpedia, and I'm going to show you guys where you can find everything too. And I'm trying to think if there's any other introduction I need to... This is not going to be the most organized show in the world. Not that, excuse me, not that any of my shows are particularly organized. Decision. Oh my God, it's not working. You are right. Let me fix this. Let me fix this. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Let me log in. I didn't do that on purpose. I should have double checked. I'm a dumbass. Ooh, I think ass is okay to say. I'm a dumb bunny. I'm really trying not to cuss on this stream. Okay, I'm log. That is my password. Oh no, that's not my password. I changed my password. I'm such a dummy. I almost yelled at Lpedia when that isn't my password. Hold on. I'm doing that now. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves. I am so embarrassed. I really did think I put that up there. Okay, decision. Now let's let me share my screen. I see it's red. Okay, so that means it's not working. What did I do wrong? Oh, I think I know what I did wrong. Let's go to edit source because it says template. I don't think I put in the right. What did I do wrong? No, that's right. Media, new tab. That's right. Why isn't that working? Let me go to recent changes. I know I uploaded the document. There's the document. And let's copy that. Name. Let's go back here. Media, new tab. Oh, I know what I did wrong. This needs to be this, I think. Hold on. I think that'll fix it. That fixed it. I put a colon instead of a pipe. That'll fix it now. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Now it's working. I got confused. Okay, it's fixed now. It's absolutely fixed now. What I don't think I have up here, though, is the folder of evidence against me. And I do think I need to put that up here. Okay. Alrighty. Let me answer Libertarian Against Lynchings comment here. What's the book on who the LNC will select as interim secretary? Let me tell you where Whitney Bill U is full of horse patookie. Thank you very much, Bob Blair Smith, for contributing towards my trip to Massachusetts. The book on the LNC replacing me. First of all, let me tell you, the LNC can't replace me. I mean, they can. They're going to. I'm still secretary. I refuse to accept. I do not recognize their authority over me or the delegates. And I will continue to call myself the LNC secretary in exile, and I dare them to sue me for it. But I remain defiant. But Ken Molman had the best suggestion, and he called and asked me about it, and I told him I completely supported it. He said, for the peace of the party, they shouldn't fill the position. That's the wisest decision they could make. Tim Hagan's not doing a great job, but he is doing an okay job. He's doing a, how do I put it, a perfectly serviceable job. And they should just let him continue to do it. Whitney quoted the bylaws that said that the LNC will nominate a successor. She's wrong. In the past, Aaron Starr was both at-large, I believe, or regional and treasurer for months and months and months. They do not have to fill the position. That bylaw provision means that if the position is to be filled, the LNC fills it. It doesn't mean they have to. She is such a snake. And Aaron Starr was both treasurer and another LNC position for a long time. And I know that because there was an appeal that was made when I was platform committee chair in which that was brought up. You'd only get one vote, but you can fill 2 positions. I also encourage them not to fill it, because whoever they put in that position is going to go through a lot. And unless that person is, I'm trying to think of a non-curse word, a butthole, my supporters, please don't give them a hard time. It's not their fault. However, I do think that any self-respecting party member should refuse if they're nominated. Anyone who doesn't refuse, I will question their ethics. I will. And I bet you they try to fill it with Alicia Matson. And holy conflict of interest. Somebody who votes to remove somebody then gets the position, but they're corrupt enough to do it. And Alicia, in her opinion, is ethically compromised enough to do it. But I think they should just allow Tim to continue to do it. Now, you want to know what I hope happens? I hope someone nominates me. Thank you, Larry. You did make me look. Do I think I would win? No. But the LNC members that have ethics should nominate me. And if this LNC wants to redeem itself at all, they will have proven their point. They removed me. They could make peace in the party by putting me back. They won't do it because they're not mature and they don't ultimately care about this party. They think they are the party. They're not the party. I never thought I was the party when I was the LNC, on the LNC. They could make things right now. They could. Oh, they're that bright, Mike. They're just not that ethical. And I will eat my words if they do it. Again, I'll offer them the same promise I did where I told you if I was wrong, and I wasn't, about my sources on the JC opinion. I think you guys now know I was right to trust my sources. I will, on a weekend, because I can't go to work this way, write, I love Bill Weld on my forehead in Sharpie. If they show some ethics, I will come on YouTube with that written across my forehead. That's how sure I am that they do not have the humility or the ethics to do the right thing. So that's the skinny. Richard Longstreth, of course, is pushing to replace as soon as possible. I think they are going to take nominations in Massachusetts. Richard, I disagree with you, as I've disagreed with you on nearly everything on this issue. And for sake of our continued friendship, as I am very, very, very fond of you, and I think you're a wonderful man, I'm not going to argue with you. We have precedent in the past for not filling the treasurer position. All the bylaws require is that if it is filled, it's the LNC that fills it. But I hope you respect, Richard, that I'm just not going to argue with you. You really, really hurt my feelings with what you said when you said, whatever, Karen. But I adore you. You're a wonderful man. Okay, what else? Before we get started. What else before we get started? I think we're just going to go right to the JC opinions. And after the JC opinions, we're going to go through some of this evidence. We're going to go through some of the history. We're going to go wherever any of you guys want us to go. And again, I didn't pull up Facebook because I said if... Hold on one second. It's my alt. Either use my alt account, which is just Karen Ann. Let me pull it up in the background in case somebody wants to come on to talk. I'll take all comers, critical or supportive. Let me pull up messages here. So just in case, that's where you will let me know. You could also alert me in chat if you've texted me and I haven't seen it, and I will send you the link to come on. Because it's very easy. You don't need any special program. But you do have to have headphones, because otherwise the sound will get weird. Okay, we're going to pull up the opinions. We're going to save the dissenting ones for last. Except for it's going to be hard to read Alicia's opinion, because she took half of her opinion just to go after D. Frank Robinson, which was just petty. Like, come on, really? Okay, 1 second here. Let me set this up. Where did Elpedia go? I fucked up. Oh my God, that was long enough. I don't think I'll get dinged for that. I effed up. Oh my God, I gotta learn how to not cuss. 1 sec. Where's my glasses? I can't find where I stuck Elpedia here for a second. Just give me one moment. And something most of you guys who watch my show know about me. I've got a tough exterior, but I'm a marshmallow. I wear my feelings on my sleeves, and I can put on a real tough exterior, but this has hurt me badly. Okay, there was a comment too. I wanted to pull up. I've got the opinion up now that I wanted to pull up here that I wanted to address. This is from a Facebook user. I say a Facebook user because the names don't come through on Facebook. That's why I ask everyone to go to YouTube. Not that you have to, but I don't know your name. And I want to pull this up here. If you will let me know your name later, I can give you credit. It says, thanks for staying in the LP. Most people in your shoes would have rage quit. Angela Keaton quit and went away after the witch hunt against her. But if we all manage to overcome this travesty, we will make the LP stronger than it's ever been. Reno will be a battle royale. We need all hands on deck. Thank you. But I'm going to be brutally honest with you. For 1 hour, I was going to quit. And there's 2 people I said that to. I don't remember who it was. One of them was Anna, the chair of the Radical Caucus. I don't remember who the other person I said it to was. But literally, I'm not going to lie. For 1 hour, I was going to quit. That was in the first hour, I learned for sure what the JC opinion was going to be. And I feel so bad for Thomas Quieter. Because I was in the lobby in New York and he was coming over to say hi and I was bawling my eyes out. Woof. I don't know why I do this, but I think it's an autistic thing. Like it distracts me and it keeps me from crying. And I'm like, I need some time alone. Please leave me alone. And I felt so bad because he's such a sweetheart. And I'm going to put up Libertarian Revolution's comment, too. I haven't seen that for a second. But I did almost quit. And I'm going to also be really, really honest with you. If this party doesn't change, we're on a really, really bad road right now. I think it's savable. But if I ever think it's not savable, how old am I now? I don't keep track of my age. I know people think that's weird. I was born October 18th, 1967. You can tell me how old I am. And I'm going to tell you something really morbid. Oh my God, I shouldn't say this. But like I had a premonition the other day that I don't really have that much longer on this earth. And I'm not going to waste it on something that's unsavable. But right now, I think it's savable. And as long as I think it's savable, I'll be here. But I did almost quit. And I do think, and they can be mad at me all they want, I think a good portion of those 11 people that voted against me were trying to drive me out of the party. And I won't give them the satisfaction. Libertarian Revolution says, I think you should still be the secretary, but effectively speaking, you're not. I disagree. I don't think the LNC... I don't recognize you were removed on false grounds. False grounds are illegitimate grounds. In the same way that Will McVeigh is not chair of Delaware, I am still chair of this party. Only the delegates can take that away from me. I refuse to recognize the authority of a rogue and corrupt LNC. Just like I refuse to recognize the legitimacy of unjust laws. Does that mean the police can't take me to jail? Of course they can. But I do not, in my soul, recognize the authority of unjust laws, and I do not, in my soul, respect or recognize the authority of this LNC. I don't. And though I am not going to say that the JC is corrupt, because I don't think they were bribed or anything like that, I don't recognize their authority either. Their judgment was abysmal. Of course, they have the bylaws authority. But that's just me. Maybe I'm being stubborn. Maybe I'm being arrogant. Maybe I'll change my tune in a month. But honestly, that's the way I feel right now. And you guys, if you aren't owed anything, you're owed my honest opinion. But definitely the LNC, who's corrupt, I do not recognize their authority. The JC is simply mistaken. They are not corrupt. I've heard people call them corrupt. They are not. I don't believe they got pressured. There was nothing like that. I do think some of what they did was cowardly, like calling people and letting them know their decision without letting me know to cover their political asses. I do think that was cowardly, but that's not corrupt. So let's be very, very careful with the word corrupt, because when everything is corrupt, nothing is. Please. We can criticize their decision. I spoke with Chuck Moulton earlier today, and he watched my prior show where he said that he recognized that I said I don't question his ethics, I only question his judgment. That's the way I feel about most of the LNC. I mean, not the LNC, the JC. I don't question their ethics, I question their judgment. I am going to do a little bit of ethical questioning, however, but I'll be very, very specific when I do that. In general, I do not question their ethics, I question their judgment. And I'll never vote for them again for JC, with the exception of D. Frank Robinson and Mary Ruart. And I'm sure they'll never vote for me for secretary, so I'm sure it's equal. Not that I'm sure any of them did to begin with. I'm trying to think of who might have. Tom Arnold might have voted for me for secretary. I don't know. I suspect he probably voted for Dave Jones. I don't know, though. I don't ask people what their votes were. Okay, let's go back down. Did I say I was still the chair? Oh my God, that was a Freudian slip. I do not want to be chair. Okay, let's now go to the opinions, and I'll pull these up. Hold on, let me just take a drink, because I really am going to need to calm my nerves. And I'll say once again, two things once again. I have read them once, but you are getting pretty close to my extemporaneous reaction because I didn't read them super carefully. And I wanted you guys to have that, like, genuine reaction. And it's going to be hard for me not to cuss, I'm sure. And the second thing, I'm going to grift my booty off. I caught myself. This show, and again, because I do now have a full-time job, but it's only 40 hours a week, unlike my last job, which will go to pay my expenses. Everything that gets contributed to this show and to my Patreon will be going to my campaign. And I have some more to say on that later. And anything tonight, by the way. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just, one thing here. I've been encouraged to go to Massachusetts, to go to the LNC meeting. I'm not going to lie to you. I get butterflies in my stomach thinking of doing that. It's going to be very painful. And scary. And right now, I really don't have the funds to do it. All super chats this evening will go towards that. Not saying that if I don't get enough this evening, I'm not going. I'm just saying any super chats this evening will go to fund my trip to Massachusetts. So if you want me to go and you can afford it, just know that that's what will happen. But I'm not going to admit, I'm not going to deny that I don't want to let them see me cry. All right, let's go through the decisions now. Let me scroll up. You guys are going to have to keep reminding me to scroll because I'm reading this on a different screen than you are reading this. And I am making it bigger so I don't have to wear my glasses. Let me know if this is a problem for you. I think I need to, isn't there like a scroll bar on the bottom here? Okay, no, I think this is good. Okay. Summary page. Respondents, blah, blah, blah. Okay. They issued. Background, I'm just making sure the background is correct. Okay, the background all seems correct. Ruling. Just quotes the bylaws. Voting to affirm. Matson, Moulton, Supreme, and Turney. Voting to reinstate. The Goats, Robinson and Ruart. The Coward, Tom Arnold. And I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me for calling Tom Arnold a coward. He's a very nice guy, and it's hard to call the Libertarian Santa a coward. But you should not be on the Judicial Committee if you don't have the nads to make a decision. And actually, the vote total shouldn't be 4-2. It should be 4 to 2 to 1. Okay, it says the office is vacant. Our bylaws are very, very vague there, though. I think D. Frank Robinson's kind of convoluted argument has some merit, but I'm not going to dispute it. I'm not going to argue it. Not because I don't think D. Frank didn't make an interesting argument, which we will go over, but because I don't think the members of this party want me to do that. They're tired. Okay, opinion by Chuck, Verman, and Jim, except Jim Turney dissents from 6.2. Okay, before we get to this, I know you guys are going to be mad at me. I want to read you something about Jim Turney. Only because I found this very interesting, that he wasn't more sympathetic. This is an old newsletter that used to be put out by Mike Holmes called the American Libertarian. This is from September of 1988. Remember how they were all upset at me because they said I caused the resignation of Joe Bishop Henchman? Let's read something here about Jim Turney, shall we? The unexpected resignation, let's pull this up bigger. The unexpected resignation of LP Treasurer Clifford Thice added drama to what otherwise seemed like the dullest meeting of the Libertarian National Committee. Because Turney had a secret meeting. 2 days prior to the meeting, members of the LNC received certified letters from party chair Jim Turney asking them to attend a pre-meeting get-together. And this was a secret meeting. LP turmoil continues, whatever. The whole point of this is that Jim Turney was a controversial chair who caused allegedly a lot of drama, and a lot of people thought he should have been removed. And the fact that he didn't have more sympathy towards me, I find to be a defect of character. I'm very proud of him for being an elected libertarian. I think in his age, because he's an older gentleman now, and this was in 1988, he has mellowed and is probably a better person. Okay, so I can send you all the link to this, but just I'm going to give you some highlights here. Turney ended up monopolizing most of the communication, which occurred and several times shouted at people who attempted to disagree with him. Most of the LNC members left after an hour or so. Okay? So we're talking about someone who is a very controversial person himself. And here is what Mark Hinkle had to say about it. Jim Turney should be listening to and not lecturing the LNC. And then it just goes on for some more thing. And it just goes on further. I'm just showing this not to demonize Jim Turney. He sounds like a man after my own heart here a little bit. I wouldn't have had a secret meeting, but he sounded like he had some balls. But for him to vote to remove me for type of behavior he sort of had back then, I think is pretty hypocritical. I'm trying to find that article where it says LP turmoil continues, because it talks about how Jim Turney took the side of Carol Moore, and that's what caused a lot of issues. Any of you who know Carol Moore know that showed some bad judgment. Let's see if we can find this. LP turmoil continues, August 1988. I looked for this, but let's see if we can find this. American Libertarian, LP. But I'm also going to show you, this goes towards the evidence against me, where people kept trying to go, no LNC has ever been so dysfunctional. You got to be kidding me. Mike, you had found this article for me before, this LP turmoil continues, because I had read it, and now I can't find it. If you could look for this in the background, I would love to bring this up. But otherwise, this was just to show that turmoil in the LNC is part and parcel of being on the LNC. And Jim Turney was part of it in the past. And that makes his opinion against me just really stupid. Oh, I did buy this postcard, by the way. Check this out. I'm glad none of my porn shows up here when I'm on the screen with you guys. Oh, crap, it didn't pull up. It's a really beautiful picture of the Statue of Liberty. Anyway, let's go back here. There's no porn on this screen. I don't watch porn on this computer. What is this? Moiety. That's where I was looking that up. But where is... Okay, here's the opinion. Suspension of officers is within the subject matter. Blah, blah, blah. The JC is not a super LNC which can substitute its judgments for the LNCs. That is bullcrap. That is bullcrap. Then there's no point in having an appeal. If all the JC was to do was to make sure that some minimal requirements were followed, you don't need a JC to do that. We are a party that believes that juries have the right to judge the justice of the law, not just the letter of the law. And if the JC itself does not believe that, they have no business being on the JC. The JC is supposed to review the judgment of the LNC. This is such a joke. Now, admittedly, though I disagree, the burden of proof is on me. I believe I met it. But this sentence goes to show right there, it wasn't even that the burden of proof was on me. I had no chance. I had no chance with this JC. Of course, the second sentence kind of contradicts the first one. The JC is an appeals body which gives a degree. Yeah, a degree of deference, which means it can substitute its judgment as long as it gives a degree of deference. Appeals bodies generally grant greater deference to issues of fact than issues of law. Oh my God, that is wrong. That is wrong. Do these people know anything about the law? I mean, I don't care because that sentence really doesn't matter for my case, but that's not true. Appeals bodies do not grant greater deference to issues of fact than issues of law. These people know nothing about the law. Are there any lawyers on the JC? I don't think there is. That just bothers me as a paralegal. Unless there's new evidence, appellate courts don't ever even look at issues of fact. They only judge issues of law, which is why you have to raise objections at the time of trial. This has nothing to do with my case. I'm just being freaked out here. Factual issues such as whether evidence submitted in support of each cause were sufficient to prove those causes should be reviewed under a clearly erroneous standard. That's correct in this case. That is correct. There's a lot of places they made... Oh yeah, Moulton is a lawyer. How did he get that wrong? That is just wrong. But he's a brand new lawyer. I don't think, has he ever practiced? Coming out of law school, I know like technically makes you a lawyer, but I've dealt with enough lawyers fresh out of law school. They ain't lawyers yet. And let's continue here. Judicial oversight issues such as whether respondent erred in allowing appellant to have her parliamentarian on the phone. It shouldn't be errored, it should be aired. Did we even bring that up? I don't think I brought that up. Like, that wasn't one of my appeal issues. Legal issues such as whether respondent should have had a trial should be reviewed de novo. I agree. I agree with that. It says my stream quality just went down. Are you guys seeing this? Are fine? Fine. The affirmative defense of pretext must be proved by a preponderance of the evidence. True. I agree with that. I agree with you, Libertarian against... Oh, maybe I read that wrong. Maybe apologies here. I think Libertarian against lynching... Okay, let me explain what I meant by this sentence, where it says appeals body generally grant greater deference to issues of fact than issues of law. Okay, I fucked that up. Excuse me. I screwed that up. You are right, Libertarians against lynching. I misread that. So apologies. But let me say how I messed that up. Appeals bodies in law generally don't even look at issues of fact. They only look at issues of fact if they impact issues of law. I messed that up. My bad. You're right. Thank you. Thank you. It says my stream is stopping. Weird. It's not on Wi-Fi. Let me know if this continues. The lagging, please let me know if the lagging continues. If so, we might need to start and restop. Please let me know. Okay. RONR disciplinary procedure. This is going... yeah, Richard, I messed that one up. I read it wrong. I don't know. I had a brain burp. I'm getting old. This is about, I'm not going to deal with this very much because Mike and I did this on Cult of RONR, but I'm going to say one thing. I'm going to say more than one thing, but I'm going to harp on one thing. I do believe that reasonable people can disagree on our bylaws and whether or not a trial is required. However, no one says that our bylaws prohibit it. While reasonable people can disagree whether our bylaws require it, reasonable libertarians cannot. And which is why I hold no personal resentment against Richard Brown for his disagreement. He's not a libertarian. He doesn't claim to be. And that's why he's such a good parliamentarian for us, because he doesn't have a dog in this fight. But reasonable libertarians cannot disagree on whether or not a libertarian is due process. If the bylaws do not prohibit it, the LNC should have given it to me. Period. And this is where the JC had every authority, even if they didn't overrule the LNC on this grounds. They should have chastised the LNC on this grounds. And it is unforgivable that they did not. I will die with those words on my lips. So we're not going to go, we've went over this a lot. I believe that they are absolutely wrong, that I was entitled for disciplinary procedures under Chapter 20. Again, reasonable people can disagree. Reasonable libertarians cannot disagree that I should have been given them, whether or not the bylaws require it or not. The very fact that the burden of proof is reversed at the JC level, to me, is absolutely determinative. But we're not going to get into that very much because Mike and I did this already. And if I remember, I'll put a card up here for that show. Okay, this is Moulton's opinion. I asked Moulton to retract this. Because this is untrue. I'm not claiming that Dr. Moulton lied. I am claiming that Dr. Moulton did not read my arguments carefully, and he also did not listen to D.L. Cummings carefully, because I never, ever, 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 ever argued that the bylaws are subservient to RONR. Never. And in fact, I wish I made that a clip of this. D.L. Cummings, in his verbal argument, said exactly the opposite. Never argued that. Never. Dr. Moulton is completely, absolutely incorrect here. And the fact that he got this so wrong makes me feel like he didn't read my arguments. The bylaws are not subservient to RONR. RONR even says that the bylaws are superior to RONR. So this is a self-contradictory statement, even if I said it. If I said that the bylaws are subservient to RONR, RONR says RONR is subservient to the bylaws. So you see what I'm saying here? This is so ridiculous. I never argued that. And I asked Dr. Moulton to write a correction and withdraw this, because this is untrue. I never said that. So this is the analysis. They're wrong. I'm just not going to get into it. I believe, even if they believed that that the LNC did not need to follow that, I believe a sentence should have been put in here under libertarian principles, considering they're dealing with, whether you like it or not, a popular secretary who was elected on the first round with over 50% of the vote, should have been given due process for the sake of the party. That's my opinion. Alternate vote. This was an argument that I made, but it was more of an ethical argument. I did not claim that the vote should have been overturned on this. This was part of a larger argument, but let's deal with this. Harlos argued that the vote relied on a temporary condition because of the participation of alternates. That is, in fact, true. The implication of that line of reasoning is that they shouldn't have been allowed to vote. I never implied any such thing, Dr. Moulton. I never saw the sentence before. Retract that. I, in fact, said at the hearing itself, you were allowed to do this. That doesn't make it right. I never said that Sexton and Ferreira should not have been allowed to vote. I never said that, ever. Now, Mr. Hector Roos of Florida did make that argument. Other people are free to make whatever arguments they wish. They didn't, oh my God, he didn't even deal with the issue. This wasn't my argument. My argument was that the LNC had unclean hands. I should pull up what I actually said, because Dr. Moulton, you ought to be ashamed of yourself that you didn't deal with what I actually said. It goes on to the free side. I want to make sure he didn't before I freak out. Okay, he didn't deal with that. Let me go to what I actually said, but I don't remember what filing I said this in. I think it was this one. One second, I'm trying to find it. Okay, here it is. Here's where he quoted me. I said the LNC relied upon a temporary condition in order to obtain the vote threshold, resulting in a situation in which, if the vote were redone with all members present, the result would be different even though no member has changed their position. That is unequivocally true. My point here was, and it goes for a while, My point here is this is not what the bylaws intended. I did not say it was invalid. What I did say is many members rightly review the suspension motion as suspect, if not downright illegitimate on these grounds. I did not say that I did. It is a fact that there is not 2/3 support of the entire LNC, meaning without alternates, for my removal. There was temporary support. But I never said they shouldn't have been allowed to vote. I did not say that. But that isn't the one I wanted to. I want to look at my first petition for appeal. I think this is where I said unclean hands. Yeah, it was trickery. It was perfectly legal trickery. Hold on. Well, crap, I can't find where I put that. I might not be able to show you that. I hope you guys are just going to be patient with me. There's a letter I want to show you guys. Yeah, it was valid but dirty. Well, crap. It might be here. There's really a letter I want to show you guys. It's not that. This is the New Hampshire report that I filed. Oh, we're going to go over that Laura Epke one. That one's important. Well, crap. Ah, here's the letter. This is from Ryan Graham, the chair of Georgia. where he shows the trickery that happened. On Saturday, Stephen let other members of the LNC know he would be leaving very early on Sunday. They, the other members of the LNC, reached out to David so that he made plans to make the drive. A decision was made not to tell Stephen on the basis that all of the details leading up to this moment were some kind of plan to not be there and to make sure a vote went a certain way. Stephen was not told that his alternate, who told him that he would not be there, David Sexton told Stephen he would not be there. He never told Stephen he changed his mind. Stephen told me that if he had known David Sexton would have made that drive, he would have canceled his plane flight and stayed. That is trickery. That is dirty hands. You do not reward dirty hands. We know this in law. Let's take the O.J. Simpson trial. Do I think that Furman planted that glove? Yes. Do I think O.J. was guilty? Yes. But the planted glove cannot be put into evidence. There's probably a bad example, but we all recognize that dirty hands, even against guilty people, can't be used. And they never deal with, well, maybe they deal with this later. Remember, this is only my second time reading this. Okay, he goes on about this. I don't disagree that they were allowed to vote. Remote voting and timing. I requested that Mr. Nikela be allowed to vote remotely. LNC did not abuse its discretion in declining to follow that abnormal procedure. That I never claimed that. What I claimed was that they didn't even allow me to make the motion when she said she would allow me to make the motion. I didn't complain that he wasn't allowed to vote. Did they even listen to me? Did they even listen to what I wrote? And I did request that it be proposed to the end of the meeting. Mr. Moulton says that that was a strategic error. It was. I made a strategic error. Do you want to know why? Because I do not play dirty. I did not even occur to me that LNC members were so dirty and that David Sexton was so dirty that he drove throughout the night to be there. Yes, that was a strategic error on my part. Even JJ, my parliamentarian, chastised me for that. Said you shouldn't have revealed your hand. You want to know what? I always reveal my hand. I am not a Machiavellian. I will never, ever, ever play by trickery. And if that causes me to lose a position, then so be it. But I have to look myself in the mirror. The fact that they didn't even deal with the trickery is gross. Okay, meaning of for cause. This is the scary part. And I want to tell you something that Mary Ruart told me when we spoke. I said, Mary, affiliates, because I was also speaking for Colorado, are scared that now for cause means anything. And you want to know what Mary said to me? They should be very afraid. If the LNC could suspend somebody for anything, the words for cause there mean nothing. If a minority voice, which is what somebody who is barely 1/3 of the LNC is, can just be removed, even though the delegates overwhelmingly voted for that person, the delegates' votes mean nothing. I suggested definitions from RONR because Dr. Moulton asked me to. This whole thing on for cause got me really upset because Dr. Moulton never mentions here that he asked for these definitions. He made it seem like I was reaching for definitions. He asked me for these. There's this sentence here, and I agree with it. And we submitted a brief about this where it says an organization or assembly has the ultimate right to make and enforce its own rules and to require its members refrain from conduct injurious to the organization or its purposes. I agree, but they didn't prove that I did that. I do agree, though, that they have the right to do that. But the point I made is my conduct was not injurious to the LP. It might have been injurious to the LNC. The LNC is not the LP. And it says here, tending to injure the good name of the organization. I didn't injure the good name of the LP. I defended the good name of the LP by saying that the LNC should do the purpose of the party. So I agree with everything they said here, but I am very ass mad that Dr. Moulton never mentioned that he asked me for these definitions. Now there's a criticism of the LNC. I agree with it. It can't. They're saying it's not for any reason, but basically it is for any reason. But let's move on. Now they deal with Vice Chair Molman's definitions. I thought his definitions were very good. He said, and Chuck said, while interesting, these are templates which may be adopted as contract clauses, not rules which govern when no definition is given. Moreover, they seem to be geared toward for-profit companies rather than nonprofit or political organizations. Fine. It's because there's very little things on those things. Whatever. I mean, I don't really have anything to say there. This is just background. It says I argued about employment law. However, the source website for that list, which was a law firm, made no claim it was exhaustive or authoritative. It certainly made a claim it was authoritative. These were lawyers advising clients. Lawyers, when they advise clients, say they're authoritative, but nothing is exhaustive. I'm sorry, this is just terribly worded by Dr. Moulton. But okay, he asked me for these things. I normally would not be quoting a law firm if he didn't ask me for these. And then they just go on talking about cause, and I'm fine with all of this. All of the literature strongly recommends specifying the definition of for cause, and that should be specified. There seems to be no perfect or authoritative definition for cause. The reason is because times change, and that period belongs inside the quotation marks, by the way. I know I'm just being a copy editor here. For purposes of this analysis, an appropriate for cause seems to fit the character of the organization best is conduct injurious to the organization or its purposes. I was not injurious to the LP, and we will argue that. I mean, I know that's the very point under dispute, but we'll get there. I may have been injurious to the LP. I mean, not to the LP. That was a Freudian slip, right? No, to the LNC. And then he goes on, I have no problem with any of this. Harassment. Okay. Here's how do I define harming the LNC? Harm's such a weird word. The harm's a very broad word. How would I define harming the LNC? By making the claim, which I absolutely believe that this is the worst LNC in the history of this party. That certainly harms their reputation, and they deserve it. Bears mentioning that sexual harassment is always listed as a category in various forecasts, whereas the broader harassment is much less frequently mentioned. Relatedly, hostile work environment, an overarching accusation from the LNC, is a legal term of art, which generally requires that the victim be a member of a protected class. Okay, blah, blah, blah. This is weird. By rejecting group rights, this is so bad. Libertarian philosophy focuses on the morality of the underlying action rather than the group identity of the victim. I agree. This therefore doesn't make any sense. Therefore, it would make little sense for libertarians to hold sexual harassment as ethically problematic while treating other types of harassment as benign. Either all types of harassment ought to be verboten or ought to be tolerated. That makes no sense. He just said that they focus on the morality of the underlying action. Sexual harassment has a specific morality that makes it unethical. For him to say, because sexual harassment is unethical, all other harassment is unethical, is ridiculous. This is illogical and ridiculous. And it says the harassment and offensive behavior prohibition removes all doubt. Harassment is injurious to the organization. There is a video we are required to watch that explains what is meant by the harassment and offensive behavior prohibition. I should have included this video in evidence. I forgot about it till recently, and it makes it very clear that it's not what's being talked about here. It says, harassment is injurious to the organization. I criticized the LNC. Criticism is not harassment. Dr. Moulton, I'm going to move. Okay, this is far enough in that it might not remove my monetization. Dr. Moulton, if you think criticism is harassment, you can go fuck yourself. Any listener who thinks criticism is harassment, you can go fuck yourself too. I criticized the LNC. I criticize the LNC for mainly two things. And anyone who has a problem with this would be better off in another party. I criticize the LNC for its utter dereliction of duty and its failure to respond to the COVID regime. 2, I criticize the LNC for how it responded to the New Hampshire situation. That is not harassment. Do you want to know harassment? Harassment is when Alicia Matson's husband says in an LNC meeting when he and I were tied in, I think it was 7 rounds of voting for platform committee chair, that the LNC should vote for him rather than me because my husband is chair of Colorado and he'll just give me the appointment. That is sexism and harassment. You want to know what's harassment? When I complained about Mr. Starr's sexist comment to me, Alicia Matson attacked me on the LNC list when I should be allowed to complain about sexism. Do you want to know what harassment is? When Elizabeth Van Horn and I complained to Nick Sarwark and provided him the email, when Elizabeth Van Horn said I was making up my autism diagnosis. Do you want to know what's harassment? When John Phillips writes to Andy Jacobs, when Andy simply had a question to him and cusses at him and tells him that he will never vote for him for a committee again because he dared to ask a question. You want to know what's harassment? When Susan Hogarth doesn't like a question from a member and tells that member, why don't you put your father on the phone because I'd rather talk to an adult. This is just disgusting. Do you want to know what is harassment? And I filed a formal complaint. And now that I'm not on the LNC and they can't remove me, I can produce this. Mama has receipts. I was in the middle of a debate on the private list when Susan Hogarth busts in and basically tries to digitally Baker Act me. In the middle of a debate, Susan Hogarth brings in my mental health after I already told her that I did not want her commenting on my health, that I found her comments on my health personally intrusive and unwelcome. And she did it anyway, and nothing happened to her. Do you want to know what is harassment? When Susan Hogarth says publicly, it's not gaslighting if you really are crazy. Do you want to know what is harassment? When I dared to complain that I was assaulted at the 2016 convention and another LNC member said, let's have a meeting about it and exclude her from the meeting. Libertarian Against Lynching, I'm being facetious here. I'm saying if what I did was allegedly harassment, then what they did was far worse. I do think what Susan Hogarth did to me is harassment, though. Some of the others, I'm just being facetious. I do believe Alicia Matson bullying me into not complaining about her husband's sexism was harassment. I don't think the regional's attempt to keep me out of a meeting talking about my assault was harassment. I just think it was being tone deaf. I'm being facetious there. I do think Susan's continued intrusion into my health is harassment. I was being facetious against some of those. And I did file complaints. Okay, then they go to all of the causes, allegedly. Now, they're going to get into this later, but I want to address it now. The JC aired entirely when they made these complaints severable. They admit that a lot of these complaints had no merit. Then they should have dismissed the case. Because what the LNC did is what prosecutors do today. They throw the book at defendants, hoping that one thing sticks or to try to bully them into a plea bargain. The LNC could have made these all separate counts and had separate votes. The JC has no way of knowing if there was a 2/3 vote on the ones they found had merit. They had no way of knowing that because these causes were not broken out. That was a fatal error on the JC's part, and shame on Dr. Moulton for being an attorney and letting that happen. Okay, they just go on to say this long-term pattern of behavior. If there was a long-term pattern of behavior, why did it wait until exactly after I whistle blew on New Hampshire to be brought forward? If it was so long-term, Ms. Mattson, why didn't you try to remove me back when we served together? It says, I highlighted various examples, blah, blah, blah. It said, but LNC said this was a long-term pattern. I never said it wasn't a long-term pattern of the other LNC members. He's acting like I said it wasn't. I just gave some examples to show their hypocrisy. Susan's behavior against me is long-term. Ask Stephen Nikala, he'll tell you. And to claim there wasn't clear error, we're going to go over all the evidence. Okay, monetizing, blah, blah, blah. I had monetized my conduct on the prior term, and the prior term had no problem with it, and Susan Hogarth was my first patron. Was she unethical at that time? I monetized my conduct when the delegates elected me. Let me tell you what this is really about. This is really about keeping Angela McArdle from being chair, because she has a patron right now so that she could be chair full time. Going on and on and on. It says, I increases her income the more controversy comes to the party. Controversy is good for the appellant, yet bad for the LP, as if I caused the controversy. Commenting on the controversy isn't causing the controversy. Apparently, I was supposed to keep quiet. And it claims there was not clear error. Oh my God. There was no proof. There was no proof at all. There was clear error. There is no proof at all. Erin Adams has a show in which she's part of it. It's not just her show. In which she criticizes the LNC. And in fact, Ken Molman has a screenshot of her threatening him that she's going to light him on fire on her show. They sell merchandise on that show with her image. I'll just leave that there. Okay, social media policy. They agree it's not a valid cause. It isn't a valid cause. The very fact that this LNC clearly invoked policies which do not apply for such a serious thing as removing an officer should have been enough to overturn the decision. The conflict of interest thing, I think, should have went here with the personal profit thing. Okay, it says the allegation is that there was an actual conflict of interest by using information gained as a fiduciary. That wasn't the allegation. The allegation, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the LNC did not say that I used information gained as a fiduciary. Every single piece of information I commented on was public. There was no information that I gained simply by being a fiduciary. If I did, if I monetized content by revealing things that were said in an executive session, I would agree that there was a problem. To say this, they can't even say this wasn't clear error because they didn't even properly say what the allegation was. I did not gain information in the discharge of duties. I had information that everyone had. This policy here is like, say that I knew there was a contract being negotiated for some service to be provided for the convention, and I released that information to another contractor to the disadvantage of the party. That's what this is about. This is just gross. Now, there's another part here where Dr. Moulton said something completely gross and wrong. And I'm going to preface this with something I said that he's going to misrepresent. Let's pretend that I was on the other side of this issue. If I were, say, Ms. Epke, I would have only concentrated on this part of the policy manual and on screenshots that dealt with this. This is their strongest case. It still fails, but I'm an honest person who will say that this is their strongest case. However, criticism is not harassment. Criticism can be offensive, but if our policy manual prohibits criticism on the basis of it being offensive, it should prohibit removal because I find being removed offensive. Okay. And they claim there wasn't clear error. Ms. Matson gets into this more in a worse way. We'll deal with it. There was clear error. I never harassed anyone on the LNC. Richard Longstreth harassed me by writing my husband, complaining about me. That is harassment. Okay. The nap in the bylaws. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. I cite what David Nolan said the nap pledge applies to in the bylaws. I am absolutely correct on that. He goes on to talk about something that Tom Knapp said in his opposition to the pledge. Okay, this interpretation strains credibility. That's what the guy who wrote it said. How can the guy who wrote it say it strains credibility? This is Dr. Moulton's own personal prejudices coming into play here. Dr. Moulton has tried for years to remove the pledge from the party bylaws because he believes, it's a pledge to be an anarchist. It's not. I do think the argument can be made that the non-aggression principle in our platform implies anarchism, but not in our bylaws, because the guy who put it in there said why it's in there. The non-aggression principle does forbid both force and fraud. The non-aggression pledge in the bylaws has nothing to do with that. What Dr. Moulton is ignoring here is that the specific charge against me was not violation of the non-aggression principle, but against the non-aggression pledge. Those two things are not the same in the party. The non-aggression pledge is something that is in our bylaws. The non-aggression principle, which is more appropriately called the non-initiation of force principle, is in both the statement of principles and in the platform. I was not accused of that. I was accused of violating the membership pledge. The membership pledge is exactly what David Nolan said it was. So, but they're going on to talk about the platform, and that's fine. We'll go on. I agree with the LNC that it forbids both force and fraud, and I can prove that I agree with that by a platform proposal that I submitted last year. So I don't argue with him there. And then he confuses the issue again here. LP members are not required to pledge adherence to the statement of principles or the platform, only to the membership certification, which doesn't mention fraud. Again, the membership certification only has to do with violent revolt against the government. I don't know what that has to do with anything here. And they're correct here. If it were enforceable, the remedy would be suspension of party membership, not suspension from the LNC. That's an argument I made. And so they said this is not a valid cause. Okay, fine. Libertarian against lynching. I can find emails for you from that, maybe. I no longer have access to my secretary email account where I have old bylaws discussions, but he won't deny it, Libertarian against lynching. Ask him. He won't deny that. You don't require 7/8 to remove the pledge, Libertarian Revolution. Let me see if I can prove to you right now he wanted to remove the pledge. He doesn't deny this, by the way, but let's look up. I believe he talks about it in his Elpedia article. But I'm sure he's watching this. I doubt it live, but he'll watch it later. If Chuck will post in comments to confirm that. But let me see here. This is a thing he made. This is a thing he made. It was sarcastic where he said, anarchist only, keep the pledge. This was his statement. He said, yeah, these were his stickers. Okay, this is now very easy to prove. He made this sticker that said, if we want anarchists only, keep the pledge. But if we want a big tent, change the pledge. This was his campaign in Portland. Let me see if I can find again where he talks about this. Right here. He also says that he was largely responsible for the Portland Purge in 2006. Moulton developed and printed all of the stickers and literature for the Reform Caucus that advocated a big tent LP open to everyone. They were unsuccessful in removing the membership pledge. So he admits right here that he wanted to remove the pledge. This isn't controversial. He talks about this a lot. 7/8 is to change the statement of principles, Libertarian Revolution, not the pledge. Pledge just takes 2/3. Okay. Okay, this is wrong. Oh my God. This is wrong. Oh, I could prove this is wrong. So easy. Let's read this. Appellant argues charges in the Bill of Particulars are not severable. Well, we can use this now, though, to get rid of every LNC member that voted for this. If any one of them is found not to be within the meaning of for cause or found to have insufficient evidence, then the whole, this was my argument. Okay. It says, wait, I might be reading this wrong. Hold on. This is written kind of poorly. Okay, listen to what they said. And how can they speak for the LNC? Because this is demonstrably false. I am going to make a big deal of this. I'm sorry. I'm actually going to file a formal complaint with the JC over this. LNC members voting affirmatively for this motion thus indicate they agree with all the charges listed. Therefore, striking some of the charges should not and does not signify lack of support for the others. Susan Hogarth stated she did not agree that I violated the membership pledge. Dr. Moulton spoke for LNC members here. How could they do that? Does this mean that if this statement is incorrect, their ruling is fatally flawed? Members, I have a request for you. Please write to each and every one of the LNC members that voted to remove me, quote this sentence, and ask them if they agreed with every single one of the charges, including that I violated the membership pledge. I'm going to write them too. They won't answer me. Please write them and ask them. And if any of them say no, I'm filing that with the JC. And I'm blowing it up, meaning not blowing it up like with a bomb. I'm blowing it up to make it big for distribution at convention. Membership people here, please, this is the sentence that I want you to write and ask all 11 of them. Blind copy me on it, please. Because this is not true. Susan herself said she just didn't feel like quibbling about the nap. This isn't true. After the show, I am going to quote this and write to the JC. Before the seat is filled, they can rescind. They won't, but they can. This is not true. There were other LNC members, and I can't remember their names, who didn't agree that I violated the social media policy. Oh my God, this is so bad. Dr. Moulton, I know you're watching this. This isn't true. And if this isn't true, your entire opinion is wrong. Okay, I said there was a pretext. There is. Just because some people, oh my God, this is such a bad argument. He says, several members who agreed with me on New Hampshire nonetheless voted for my suspension. It doesn't require that everybody have the same pretext. If it required 2/3, all I have to point out is one person had a pretext because it then would have failed. It doesn't require that everybody. And to say I don't meet the preponderance of evidence, I provided written evidence that multiple LNC members have been plotting my removal since the moment I was elected. How is that not evidence? He's correct here. I didn't cite, I'm not sure I said they had no power. I think I cited that as persuasive, but I could be wrong. But Dr. Moulton's correct here. I did some more research on this, and DC does apply. So I won't disagree with them here. Oh my God, I can't believe he argued this. Can you believe he argued this, JJ? Both DC and Virginia corporate law have provisions for removal of officers, which are distinct from removal of directors. Oh my God, didn't they rely upon the opinion of a parliamentarian that was referencing removal of at-large? And our argument was that RONR has provisions for removal of officers that are distinct from removal of at-large. Oh my God. This would be funny if it weren't sad. But I agree with him here that DC law applies, so I'm not even going to argue that, but I just find that funny. It says here that I presented some baseless arguments. You're entitled to that opinion. I obviously didn't think they were baseless. And I presented a lot of arguments because they presented a lot of arguments. I would have preferred they stuck to the strongest, and I would have. And it said I submitted over 13 pages of political lobbying emails. No, well, you could call them that, and I think that would be fair. I submitted proof that the membership did not support the LNC, and it's that the membership that controls this organization. The fact that you didn't care about that either, Dr. Moulton, says a lot. I submitted them to show that the membership is on my side. How could I? Okay, let's think this through. Dr. Moulton is agreeing with the LNC that I harmed the party. Yet the people that are actually the party, the membership, wrote more emails in support of me than any other issue in the history of this party. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things is not the same. Dr. Moulton, you missed the point. Okay, so we have there. We went through his opinion. Now, it said that Turney did not agree with 6.2, which was conflict of interest, I think. Let's skip Matson's here for a moment because hers is the worst. And let me try to find Turney's. Yeah, let me look at the preface on that. I don't think Dr. Moulton read half of my shit. I mean, my stuff. I'm trying to find where... Did Turney say where he didn't agree with 6 point... Yeah, okay. Okay, so I will give him credit here. He agrees with me on this, that's fine. He also agrees that we need to revise the bylaw. His opinion was pretty innocuous. I just think it was hypocritical considering how people thought he created a hostile working environment when he was chair. I do think it's appropriate for the Judicial Committee to rule based upon personal, well-founded opinion of consequences. Courts do that all the time. Courts uphold free speech all the time because of the chilling effect. But other than that, I don't have very much to say about that. I've worked with Jim Turney on the convention committee. I think it's quite apparent he's not the same person he was when he was chair in the 80s, in which he seemed to be quite the firebrand. But I wish that his memory would have given him a little bit more sympathy for my position. Now here's Vermin Supreme's stupid opinion, and anyone who voted for him is a joke. Look, he made it about him. Look how he made it. What a dick. The case was not about, it was about bylaws. Bylaws is greater than drama. Okay, Judge Vermin Supreme. This case isn't about drugs. It's about the law. What a joke. He made a joke of this entire party. Okay, I'm not going to, well, let's go now to Alicia's opinion. And we're going to skip over ones I've already dealt with Dr. Moulton. Did they follow procedure? We disagree on RONR. So I'm not even going to get into that. And then she gets into just going off on D. Frank. I'm not going to... We'll deal with that when we deal with D. Frank's opinion. Okay, so... well, at least she says that I conceded the votes were proper. They were. So, no rule was violated. All I said is that there isn't a perpetual 2/3 vote for me to 2/3 support for me to be removed. That was all I said, and nobody ever dealt with that. Nobody ever dealt with that point. But I'm glad she saw that I never said they were improper. Okay, we go to cause. Let's continue. And she's correct here too. If the LNC had no policy prohibiting harassment, engaging harassment would still be cause. That's true. That's absolutely true. Which is why I believe that policy needs to be removed from the policy manual, because it's been weaponized. And if somebody actually is engaging in harassment, which I was not, it's still a removable thing. It wasn't Chuck Moulton. That Ms. Matson misrepresented me here. It says, during the meeting, I conceded there's merit to the harassment of allegation. I did not say that. She quotes what I said. Did I say there was merit? Harassment and offensive behaviors, that one perhaps, I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, perhaps the one that should have been stuck with. Because that's the only one that has even any indicia of credibility. I did not say there was merit to it. I said that's the only one that any argument could potentially be made for. And then I went on to rebut it. Because I'm honest. That's not true. That is, oh my God. Nowhere did I attempt to defend against, that is not true. That is absolutely not true. We will go through my written submissions. I did allege they hadn't followed their policy, but I also didn't engage in harassment. Okay, here's where Ms. Matson is lucky. I do not believe in libel law, though I'm a public figure, it'd be very difficult to prove. And I asked her for timestamps. We will see if she provides them. I have the transcripts. I'll give the transcripts to anyone who asks. It says, excessively personal critiques. Insults. I did insult. I did name call. I did engage in mockery of their performance. And other party members. The only other time I spoke about other party members was the lady who threatened to beat me within a pulp of my life and the man who refused to condemn it. At times referencing their jobs or their family members. I do not know the jobs of people on the LNC. Let me think here. The people I've criticized. I mentioned I mentioned that Matthew Buffman is a cop. And that is relevant because he used his private investigation skills to compile information. That is a critique of what he did on the LNC. It is not going into something irrelevant. The only time I mentioned a family member was to compliment Aaron Adams. on the fact that I believe she is a fantastic mother because she has an adult son who has special needs. And too many people and this is an issue that's near and dear to me because I have an aunt who has since recently passed away that was mentally disabled. And everyone kept advising my family to put her in a group home. And a lot of people do that. And the only time I mentioned their family members was to say Aaron Adams is a hero for not putting her son into a group home and for taking care of him. I never, ever went after people's family members. And riddled with vulgarities. Yes, I curse. And if you consider things like go fuck yourself to be a sexual term, that is just simply an insult term today. I never used what would be considered sexual innuendo towards LNC members, ever. I used typical terms that is used throughout society as insults. This reminds me when I was on a Christian forum where I said something sucks. They accused me of saying I was referring to fellatio. She is absolutely libeling me here. I used typical insults, not sexual innuendo. Now, on Cultivar ONR, I use sexual innuendo all the time. Has nothing to do with the LNC. I critiqued them harshly with vulgarities, yes. With name-calling, yes. And you're allowed to do that to public figures. She doesn't like it. That's too bad. But if I did actually use sexual terms and innuendo, then she should accuse me of sexual harassment. And nobody has. Excessively personal is subjective. I critiqued. And I do intend to continue it. And she is incorrect here. There was not an overwhelming vote for suspension. There was barely 2/3. And they had to sneak in an alternate. And, Ms. Mattson, you are a liar. Both parties are in agreement about the harassment charge. You are a liar. I do not agree about the harassment charge. I critiqued them. Even right here, where she says I agreed, I did not agree. All I said is, if they were trying to remove me, they should have just stuck with that one, because that's the only one that they can make an argument for. I did not say I agreed with the argument. And right here, not all choices for how to express disagreement are compatible with service on a board. That is up for delegates to decide, Miss Mattson. Not for you. But I do like that she said this. Because if I've violated the harassment policy, John Phillips certainly has. He uses far more sexual innuendo than I do. And there's something else I will point out here without naming names because it's not important. In looking at that policy, no LNC member is supposed to post any kind of sexually charged content. And there is a Facebook group ran by an LNC member that is pornographic. Now, everyone there, I used to be a member of it. Everyone there is there voluntarily. But that doesn't mean that a member couldn't find out about it and find it offensive. And then she goes on to say it's an ethical bridge too far to financially incentivize perpetuating conflict. The conflict already existed. I merely told members about it. I did this when she was on the LNC. And funny enough, I did it when I was criticizing Nick Sarwark, which she agreed with and said nothing. Okay, let's continue here. We just disagree there. I would agree with her here. Ambiguous policies are not helpful. She is correct. She says, I brand my personal social media accounts with my LNC secretary title. That is biographical information. Let's go look at this because I want to show you guys something. I am so disappointed in Ms. Matson. Let me show you something, though, here. The alt account isn't really the one I want to look at because this one's kind of a joke. Yeah, because this one talks about me being... This is a joke. And this one didn't exist at the time. Let's go to the one that existed at the time that she wrote this. I might have changed this, though, since then. I think I changed this. Crap. Isn't there a screenshot, though, of this in the Bill of Particulars? I think there's a screenshot about what this said. I think there is. Where is it? How can I view my own profile? Yeah, I changed this. Presently appealing suspension by corrupt LNC. We'll have to go look at the screenshots because they screenshotted what it said. But let's go to YouTube here a second. As if I didn't say that, people wouldn't know I was LNC secretary. That is what is so stupid. Switch account. How do I switch account? Switch account, add account. I want to go to my Pink Flame of Liberty account. Crap, I don't know my password. Let me guess. I think this is it. Check my phone. I think my password is saved here. Let's go here. I hate this two-factor authentication. Okay, we can go here. YouTube Studio. I want to go to settings. General. Channel. Advanced settings. Well, crap. General. Channel. Basic info. Advanced. There's something here which shows up on all of my videos. Permissions. Upload defaults. Okay. All opinions are those of Karen Ann Harlos and not to be attributed as the official position of the Libertarian Party. That has always been there. Actually, I have it on there twice. I guess I wanted to make sure people really knew this. Look, I have it on there twice. I completely distance myself from my personal opinion. And let's go look at the About section. No, not meta tags. I just wanted to show that I made it very clear. How do I view my channel? That I made it very clear that my opinions are my own and that they aren't the LP's opinions. Is there an About? Oh, right here. I am Karen Ann Harlos. Oh, I changed this. Well, the exiled secretary. I think it just used to say secretary. All opinions expressed are mine and mine alone and not those of the party unless specifically stated otherwise. If unsure, ask. I've always had that disclaimer. Always there. To say what I am is merely biographical information. So, when an LNC member is invited to speak at a convention because they're an LNC member, are they monetizing their position? When their room is paid for and their airport and all of that. And sometimes you're offered a speaker fee. I've been offered a speaker fee 4 or 5 times to come speak as secretary. I've refused it every time. Actually, what I said is, fine, I immediately donate it back to the party. Because I know sometimes they have to do that for accounting purposes. I've never accepted a speaker fee, and I never will, for libertarians. For libertarian parties, let's put it that way. So, biographical information now is saying that you're monetizing your position. 50 years from now, not that I probably will not be alive. Let's do something where I'll probably still be alive. 10 years from now, I'll still say that I was the secretary of the National Libertarian Party. I say that I used to be the communications director of the Libertarian Party of Colorado. Is that still monetizing my position as communications director? It is so ridiculous. Laura Epke mentions that she's at large on her nonprofit. Is she using her position to get donations for her nonprofit? Okay, let's go back now to the opinions. Is that it? Well, crap. I think I lost my spot. Was it here? I think I lost my spot. Oh my God. I don't see. Oh, here it is. Okay. Non-aggression principle. She sidesteps it and tries to claim that I slandered. Said that I made allegations which were unfair at best. Says who? plenty of party members felt they were very fair. And you're allowed to make untrue ones as long as I didn't know they were untrue. And she never alleges that. That is required for slander, by the way, is reckless knowledge of the untruth of something. Everything I have said, whether or not it turned out to be true or not, and I don't think anything's been proven not to be true, I believe it's true. Talking about free speech. This case is about freedom of association. The delegates chose me. And it says our bylaws give the LNC the power to disassociate. You're presuming what you intend to prove, and I suppose we will have to wait for the convention. But I do not believe that the delegates believed the LNC could remove an officer based upon these kinds of bogus charge. I believe firmly that they believed that that removal for cause were for things like crimes. To say one cannot presume all delegates had the same knowledge of the candidates, I told the delegates in my nomination speech what I was going to do. And the rest of this we kind of dealt with. At least she admits that I've never misbehaved in a meeting. And then she goes on about D. Frank. Okay, now let's look at the really good ones. D. Frank Robinson. What is that asterisk? I don't know what the asterisk is. I think he probably mentions that he's a founder of the party. But let's go see. Wow, D. Frank, you wrote a lot. Thank you. Yeah, he gave his bona fides, and I'm fine with that. Ryan, you are so right here. Let me put this up on the screen. And I'm going to say something about Alicia's opinion. And she'll probably think this is unkind. And some of you may think it's unkind. I thought her opinion was vicious. I didn't think it was professional. And here's my personal opinion. She can call it slander. I think she slandered me. I think Alicia is getting revenge because I beat her by a 20-point spread in 2018. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. Now, that being said, Alicia remains one of the smartest women I know and one of the best secretaries this party has ever had. You'll note that just because I don't like what somebody says or things that they do, that I never take away from their accomplishments. I will never trust her again, but I will always respect her abilities as secretary. Ryan said this. This is great. If the delegates elect officers who don't want to associate, the majority of officers shall prevail. Actually, 2/3, but still, it's still quite a hot take, isn't it? Okay. Let's continue. Now I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't even barely skimmed what D. Frank had to say because I knew a lot of what he had to say from what he posted publicly. So this is going to be my initial reaction. I read Mary Ruwart's much more carefully. I'm going to read his in full if people don't mind. If you do mind, just tell me in chat and I'll summarize. But because this is, I barely skimmed this. This is, let's just consider this my first read. And I want to give you my spontaneous reactions. The Libertarian Party was founded on a pledge to challenge the cult of the omnipotent state. And just one other thing. Yeah, I just think Alicia was being very mean. While I think Dr. Moulton was very mistaken, I don't think anything he said came out of malice. Oh, and before we go there, I wanted to read the preface. One second. That somebody wanted me to read. Let's go here. Somebody asked where to read the amicus stuff. It's all right here. Here's my filings. There's the filings of the LNC. And here's all the amicus. But the preface, notice of filing redacted emails. Yeah, my preface was I filed this to show libertarians who supported my retention. That was it. Okay. I thought I said a bit more than that, so I can't fault Chuck Moulton for not saying more. I think, Mike, you might have thought I said more than that too. But I did say why I submitted it. It was to show that members supported me. Okay. Let's continue. The Libertarian Party was founded on a pledge to challenge the cult of the omnipotent state and to defend the rights of the individual. Doing one requires the other, and also means, and I want to check one thing here too. I'm sorry. I just wanted to see how many people were still watching to see if I've been boring everyone to death. Y'all can let me know when and if you want me to shut up, if you think this needs to be 2 shows. Doing one requires the other and also means opposing all cults or cliques of the infallible personality. There are certain procedures which, if engaged, serve as peer review of all claims of omnipotent infallibility. All the procedures are rooted in the premise that speech must be free, so illusions can be exposed and rejected. The utility of free speech is not a legalistic document. It is the exercise of an innate biological function of intelligence. Without conviction in the necessity of free speech, the cults and cliques of infallibility will become omnipotent using ignorance, impulse, and rage. You need a Oxford comma in there, D. Frank. And this gives me an opportunity to show one thing I disagree with Alicia Matson. I do not believe free speech just means that the government can't infringe upon it. I'm a free speech purist. I believe free speech needs to be valued for its own sake, particularly speech you find offensive. It has nothing to do with laws. It has everything to do with when you remove speech, violence is inevitable. The right to unbound freedom of political speech, including the right to advocate the violent overthrow of the government, ended in the United States with the conclusion of the American Revolutionary War. With the establishment of the United States under the Articles of Confederation, freedom of speech is no longer included the right to advocate the overthrow of the government, and that has remained the barrier to absolute freedom of speech ever after. I didn't know that. I learned something. Yeah, that's a good point, D. Frank. So this has nothing to do with my appeal. Y'all know I'm a pacifist. So today, if someone advocated the overthrow of the government, is that just considered treason? And how does that square with the Declaration of Independence? Not that I would ever advocate that. Well, I guess violent, I mean, I do advocate the peaceful overthrow of the government. Am I committing treason by saying that? The founders of the Libertarian Party recognized the force majeure behind that barrier to absolute freedom of speech even within the Libertarian Party. That is why we insist upon the non-aggression pledge to signify that we do not challenge the cult of the omnipotent state by advocating for its violent overthrow. In grossest terms, we are not suicide bombers or the political arm of some militia movement. We are persuaders. However, within the party itself, there were to be no further barriers to freedom of speech on matters political, economic, or social. Freedom of speech is how humans negotiate consent and cooperation to establish order peacefully or signify withholding consent or cooperation. Any barriers to freedom of speech are barriers to consent and impose coercion to prevent negotiation for cooperation. Such barriers deny the efficacy, I think he means, of human intelligence. I have a favor to you guys also to ask. It's been a while back. I could get the date later. But I really need someone to get me the screenshot of where Susan Hogarth said that she didn't agree or necessarily agree that I violated the NAP. She just didn't feel like quibbling over it. The members of the Libertarian Party are now confronted by some persons in temporary positions of authority, seeking to impose barriers to freedom of speech far beyond the prohibition of advocating the violent overthrow of the government. The prudential vision of the founders, and something else I wanted to say, where she talked about sexual innuendos, Alicia, I never, ever, 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 at least I don't think so, and if I have, I will concede this, but I was pretty careful. I usually saved my, go F yourself with a barbed dildo comment to statists, not libertarian people. I said it about people who support vaccine mandates. And is Alicia objecting to that? I'm just curious. I also said it to President Biden, by the way. The prudential vision of the founders, I don't believe I've ever said that to an LNC member, though. The prudential vision of the founders, of which I am among the few survivors, was that freedom of speech among libertarians should not be punishable, so long as the speech did not advocate the violent overthrow of the governing force majeure, but also did not advocate the use of force or fraud in our social relations. Fraud means extracting property from another by deception. The present attempt at censorship within the party takes the form of alleging that some speech is force or fraud. I'm going to disagree with Mr. Robinson here. I do think some speech can be fraud. If anyone in chat disagrees with me, let me know, but let me give you an example. If I tell you something that is fraudulent, and you rely upon that in a way that costs you money or property, my speech is fraud. Oh, thank you for reminding me about grifting. Oh, yeah, you're talking about 2 more opportunities if I do separate shows. True, but I want to grift again now. Remember, any super chats in this show will go towards sending me to Massachusetts. I have made the decision that I want to go. Now it's just a matter of getting me there. If anyone here listening is in Massachusetts and can put me up for a couple nights so that I don't have to spend money on hotel, and if perhaps could volunteer to pick me up from the airport, etc., I would be eternally grateful. Speech, they contend, that is, critical public figures leading the party, must meet some vague standard of decorum. There is more than a taint of the puritanical in these claims. Speech itself is not force unless the decibel level can cause physical injury, and even then, people have been known to consent even to that. There is no threat to property rights in this controversy to appeal to the Judicial Committee. Agree. What the attempt at censorship of member, I think he means a member, and party official is an impairment of the right of association. It's interesting that he makes the same argument as Alicia, but the opposite direction. Yeah, Daniel tweet, detrimental reliance. The members have the ultimate means to protect associational rights by withdrawing from the association. They can and they have provided for other means of protecting their associational rights with rules of procedure which preserve the ability of the association to function while also preserving the rights of the member to control short of secession. These certain procedures which engage, let me tell you why I like D. Franks, is he argues as a libertarian and not as a lawyer. These certain procedures which, if engaged, serve as peer review of all the claims of omnipotent infallibility. All the procedures are rooted in the premise that speech must be free, so that illusions can be exposed and rejected. The utility of free speech is not a legalistic doctrine. Oh, he said this twice. I think he didn't notice that. Didn't he? Did I do something wrong here? I think I messed something up and read something twice. Okay, the bylaws give the aggrieved a clear-cut choice: appeal or abandon your personal 7-day ticket to appeal and resign by default. Okay, I'm going to skip. I'm going to save for discussion with Mike all of this thing about the ambiguities in our bylaws because I'm not going to fight that. And I think it's a very interesting discussion, but I think it belongs in a Cult of RONR episode. JJ, don't leave me now. Okay, good night. I'm not going to get into all of this bylaw stuff. In addition to being individuals regulated by government censorship prohibiting speech advocating its overthrow, the party is a government-regulated body, a federally regulated organization by the FEC. As a political party seeking recognition to have permission from the various states to have voters allowed to vote for our candidates on the ballots, the party is a regulated quasi-governmental organization subject to force majeure, I think he's using that word wrong, and matters of free speech under government officials' interpretation of the First Amendment. Instead of an extended dicta on my part, I reference this amicus brief to the Supreme Court on a case seeking decision on the free speech rights of a board member of a public body in the state of Texas. We'll read that in another broadcast. The respondents claim that fraudulent speech violates the non-aggression pledge. Can speech be fraud? He agrees with me. A fraud takes place when someone acts in response to the speech of another by giving up property. One cannot be defrauded by speech one does not act on. Okay, we agree. And he quotes the first sentence about fraudulent inducement. What valuable thing has the LNC been induced by its secretary to part with? It cannot be anything reputational. The members of the LNC, individually or collectively, have no property right to their reputations within the affairs of the party. If they wish to make such claims, it must be pressed outside the party in the courts. Why does he keep saying force majeure? Projecting criticism of party officials as if such criticism was of all members and the association itself is a deprivation of individual rights of association and free speech. Absolutely. For what they are worth in the realm of force majeure, the precedents are adverse. The punishing as defamation of one's reputation with financial penalties if one is a public figure, because speech, punishable speech, needed to proofread this. Must show beyond a reasonable doubt actual malice. It is reasonable to assume the members of the LNC pressing their claims of malicious speech by the Secretary have calculated their prospects for external vindication of their feelings and elected instead to seek retribution only within the governing rules of the party. Okay. Within the governing rules of the party, I find this dispute is less about just cause alleged for removal of any officer of the party and more about who is in charge of defining the rights of the members. I am not going to read this word for word because some of it is a bit filler that I want to keep y'all's attention. Says that some members anticipated a time would come when some in positions of authority would attempt to subvert the purpose of the association for personal, if not political, advantage. Then he goes on about, Nixon's enemies list. And the conventions. Okay. And the Judicial Committee. Okay, perfect. Which brings us to the third internal shield, which is the Statement of Principles. Perfect. Subsequently, the Secretary of the LNC is seeking to remove from office. I like how he gives me credit for protecting this party. And guess who didn't want me to protect this party? Who voted against protecting the Statement of Principles? Alicia Matson. I can't remember if Chuck Moulton did or did not. The Secretary of the LNC is seeking to remove from office, secured at a recent convention, a shield for the 7/8 shield by getting the bylaws amended to make amending the 7/8 rule itself only amended by a 7/8 majority vote of the delegates. I've harmed the party. Without sounding arrogant. In doing that, I've done more for the party than a lot of people have done. Good night, Stephen. I'm sorry I'm kind of boring everybody. The first and most dispositive issue to consider in this appeal is whether, pursuant to the bylaws, an officer can be suspended via a regular motion adopted by 2/3 vote of the LNC in lieu of all other procedures of the bylaws. And then he goes on and says, is a trial required? He agrees with me. The 2/3 vote provision for suspension is a redundancy. The bylaws provide that such a vote is to suspend an officer. I don't agree with him here, though. It is not a vote to remove an officer permanently. This is what Mike and I are going to go through. We're gonna because I think I disagree with D. Frank. It's interesting though. Okay, we're gonna skip all that. And we'll go over what Alicia had to say about this too, Mike. Okay, all of this we're going to go over separately. I'm sorry, everyone, but this gets into RONR, and I don't want to bore you guys even more. Okay. I find the LNC Bill of Particulars for suspension under appeal provides no culpable malfeasance by the appellant. And by the way, if Alicia ever does provide me timestamps, I'll go over them with you all. It does contain a litany of speeches by the appellant, which are not he misspelled that, justiciable if directed at public figures, and are political and impugn a public figure's fitness for office or public esteem. All officers, candidates, and aspiring candidates for offices, public or partisan, are public figures. In libertarian terms, they have no safe haven within the party from criticism and defamation laws. And within the context of Libertarian Party affairs, all members have an absolute right of free speech concerning party affairs. Elected officials and national candidates of the party should act prudentially when making statements about the LP Statement of Principles or the Non-Aggression Pledge, but discipline for such acts of speech are not subject to any of the disciplinary provisions of the bylaws. The sole exception to free speech rule, which is subject to discipline under the bylaws, is repudiation of the pledge that the Libertarian Party does not advocate the overthrow of the government by force or violence. Challenging the legitimacy of government, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And he says, I've never advocated the violent overthrow of the government, which I never have. And then he goes on about something else that we're not going to go over. I now turn for comparison with the actions of a recent former officer to the actions of the Secretary in this appeal. We have a situation which arose in 2018 when the LNC failed to act to discipline an officer, the chair, who was grossly derelict in performing the duties of their office and did cause actual harm to the party and impeded its functions under the bylaws. Oh shit, he went after Nick. I didn't know this. In 2018, at the National Convention, there was an election to fulfill the positions of the Judicial Committee. Way to go, D. Frank. I love you, man. The presiding chair aborted the election in progress by declaring adjournment. One of the candidates immediately challenged the ruling of the chair. The chair simply declared the objection out of order because the body was adjourned. The result was to leave the LP without a duly elected Judicial Committee until the 2020 convention. That nasty old RONR is clear in such an instant. The chair was obligated to immediately consult with the convention parliamentarian and could have reversed his ruling so that the election could have been concluded, and that is absolutely correct. The excuse given at the time was that adjournment was required because the audio-visual technicians needed to break down their equipment by 6 p.m. There is no provision in the bylaws for adjournment to remedy a technical issue. There was no threat to life or limb to justify an emergency adjournment. The Libertarian Party has had many conventions without any audio-visual facilities and conducted elections without AB. The actions of that past chair were ignored by the LNC. The chair was not censured, suspended, or removed from office. The negligence by that chair caused harm to the party. Oh my God, he really went after Nick, and he is right. Okay, we're continuing. We're going to go over this with Mike, because this has to do with RONR. The procedural defects are sufficient to declare it null and void. However, it also fails to justify cause for the suspension of the secretary. Continuing. The Libertarian Party was founded in heresy. True. Suppressing member speech within the party is not only disruptive of the objectives of the party and an injustice to members, but has other political risks. He's going on about his little weird interpretation of the bylaws that Mike and I are going to go over. In dissent from the consensus of the Judicial Committee, I find the LNC Bill of Particulars without merit, as procedurally defective for lack of due process. He's correct. and dissent from the consensus of the Judicial Committee, I find the allegations in the LNC Bill of Particulars peculiar in claiming that one's speech can violate their presumed property right in their subjective opinions of their reputations. As Mr. Bill Sorensen pointed out to me, I'm not so sure he's reading Bill Sorensen right, so I'm skipping that part. I'd like to ask Bill that. And then he talks about a secrecy thing that Mike and I will get into. Then he has some addendums, that I don't think we need to go through. But he did a very good job on this. Now we're going to read Mary's opinion, which is very good and is going to be my manifesto. Someone asked me to remove the chat highlight. Oh, thank you. I didn't know that was still there. You guys got to let me know that stuff because I'm not looking at my screen. Hold on one second. Let me take care of that for you. Thank you. Always let me know that. Okay, we're going to read this in full probably. And I also want to let you know this, and maybe I shouldn't, because she hasn't said one way or another, but she said she would consider it. I spoke to Mary after this was released, some on some personal issues that I'm not going to go over, because they're personal. But some of you may not know, Mary gave my nomination speech for my first run as secretary. I asked Mary to consider giving my nomination speech in 2022. She said she would consider it. She didn't say this, but she highly implied that if she doesn't, it isn't because she wouldn't want to, but because she's not even sure she will be at this convention. We forget that Mary's been doing this a very, very long time. And she's a lot older than I thought she was. Freedom has kept her looking young. I hope I look as good as Mary Ruart does when I'm her age, if I live to be that long. I hope she does make it to the convention and does my speech. Nothing would honor me more. I'm going to ask her if she's not going to come to convention, if she would consider doing my nomination speech via video. I normally don't like those, but I think so highly of her that I would make an exception. Okay, let's read this out loud. In writing this opinion, I am dissenting. Oh, let me say one other thing. She told me she didn't get into the Robert's Rules of Order stuff because she doesn't consider that her strength and didn't feel she was qualified to. Bob Blair Smith, if you tried to get me to, I think she's older than 72, Libertarian Revolution, unless I am misremembering, she told me she's pushing 80. And I was shocked. I'd be shocked that she's 72. She looks my age. And I think I look young for my age. I could be flattering myself. Okay, but continuing, she will not mention Roberts at all in this because she said, again, she didn't consider she was qualified for that. In writing this opinion, I am dissenting from the majority of my colleagues on the JC. This dissent is based on a different interpretation of our bylaws, which 1, did not define what cause for removal might be, and 2, gave the JC the instruction to put the burden of proof on the appellant. The JC members were concerned about these issues, which we discussed at some length in executive session and email exchange. We were frustrated on these two issues because we could not be sure what the bylaws actually intended. I believe this case might have been decided very differently had the bylaws been more specific. I am putting this up front, in my opinion, as delegates going to read them might wish to consider revisions to the bylaws accordingly, and I hope they do. Daniel, I must have misunderstood her, or she was just feeling her age. You know how sometimes people will say they're pushing more than they are? Because I'm pretty sure she said to me she's pushing 80. But still 72. We've asked an awful lot of this woman. Burden of proof on the appellant. Since the bylaws put the burden of proof on the appellant, you see language in the Moulton majority brief, such as respondent submitted evidence in support of its allegation, while appellant submitted evidence rebutting the allegation. Because the Judicial Committee is deferential to respondent on factual matters, it reviews respondent's decision on sufficiency of the evidence under a clearly erroneous standard. There was not clear error. By the way, D.L. Cummings has some opinions about this erroneous standard thing, and I don't want to steal his thunder, and he's told me he's going to do a podcast on it, so that's why I am kind of overlooking this clearly erroneous standard thing. I disagree with Dr. Moulton here, but I want to leave that for DL, who's much less long-winded than me to deal with. What does this mean? A legalistic term, the clearly erroneous standard says that where there is a finding of fact by a court, in this case 2/3 of the LNC, that finding will be accepted by the appellate court unless it has a definite and firm conviction that a mistake has been committed by that court. In my opinion, this high standard was not the one the delegates had in mind when putting the burden of proof on the appellant, and I agree with Mary. My take is that the delegates are trusting that the respondent, in this case 2/3 of the LNC, is likely to be in the know and worthy of trust. Unfortunately, in my experience, this trust may not always be justified, as I address in the section on hostile work environment. What is cause? Is cause what the LNC says it is? Or is it the more usual legalistic definition, which includes but is not necessarily limited to criminal activity, failure to perform the duties associated with the office, and/or activities which produce demonstrable harm to the organization? When do such things rise to the level high enough for suspension to be permissible, given that our LNC officers are elected by the convention delegates? The way in which each JC member in good conscience, I believe, answered these questions greatly contributed to the position they took in this case. And Mike, yeah, DLs will do much better than me on that argument. My take is that the delegates expected that the LNC honor their choice of officers elected by the convention. Of course, the delegates realized that mistakes can be made or they can be played. Consequently, they allowed the LNC to suspend an officer for cause. Man, is she reasonable. I interpret cause in this case to be things like criminal activity such as embezzlement, failure to perform the duties of secretary such as not producing the minutes of LNC meetings, or behavior that caused demonstrable harm to the LP. The LNC's case basically rests on the third cause, since it does not, as near as I can tell, indicate that the secretary has undertaken criminal activity or performed to fail the duties of the office to which she has been elected. Even given the deference that the bylaws instruct the JC to give to the respondents, I do not find their case compelling. This might be due, at least in part, to the rather disorganized presentation of their case, and I'm glad she mentioned it, which contrasted with that of the appellant's better organized and more precise step-by-step counterclaims. Although I did not agree with every statement that Ms. Harlos made, I felt I could more easily follow her logic from her written submissions. I might ask Mary what she didn't agree with, because I'm curious. Maybe she says so here. Specific claims. The respondents claim that Ms. Harlos has engaged in a long-term pattern of behavior, both in official communication and via her monetized social media and YouTube platforms, which is detrimental to the party and its operations and purposes. These actions by Ms. Harlos have resulted in members of the LNC being unable to engage in respectful and professional public discussion before the body, making the committee dysfunctional for fear of bullying, harassment, and inaccurate characterizations to discredit and disrupt this committee's work. This quote also appears in section 6.1 of the Moulton opinion. The first sentence of this paragraph claims that Ms. Harlos' behavior is demonstrated both in official communications and via her social media. However, all of the appendices listed in support for this claim are appellant's social media. I did not find any official communications in that list. There were some. Ms. Ruhr, it's Dr. Ruhr as well, isn't it? However, they have nothing to do with anything. I think there were about 4 official communications in there, though, that proved nothing. The bill did indicate that in her social media, Ms. Harlos identified herself as secretary of the LNC LP. These are, in my opinion, biographical statements. That's exactly what I said. Simply identifying oneself as holding a particular office in one's social media does not make that communication an official document of the LNC. Therefore, it appears that respondents' complaints only apply primarily, if not completely, to her social media. This section next claims that Ms. Harlos' actions have resulted in members of the LNC being unable to engage in respectful and professional public discussion before the body, making the committee dysfunctional. Let me just tell you, I am copying Mary's opinion and sending it to every single delegate. Inaccurate characterizations to discredit and disrupt the committee's work. Is the respondent really saying that the secretary made LNC members so afraid of criticism in her social media that they could not function? If internal criticism on social media platforms that only LP insiders are likely to view is enough to cripple the respondents on the LNC, then with all due respect to the considerable commitment of time, money, and effort its members have made, perhaps they should consider alternative service to the LP. Amen. Do the respondents really want us to believe that mean words are enough to paralyze them? If so, how does our LNC expect to stand up to the state, which bolsters any criticism that it has with retaliations of physical force? And I love what Dustin Nana said. Dustin Nana said they're just using me as a scapegoat for their own guilt, for their own ineffectiveness, because he certainly has been able to get things done no matter what I say. I find the claim that a colleague's criticism can paralyze the LNC is highly unlikely. It is extremely disturbing for the future of the LP if a lone person can make the LNC dysfunctional solely with his or her criticisms, however harshly stated. The respondents didn't claim that appellant's criticism was untrue, although it does claim inaccurate characterizations, which are presumably a matter of opinion. Since bullying and harassment may also fall into that category, I fear that the Moulton opinion in this case is going to have a chilling effect on future LNC members who may want to expose questionable practices of their colleagues. Credible claims could be made that some of the respondents could be accused of similar harassment language. Absolutely. And Susan Hogarth has already been chilled. Susan Hogarth has said in the secret list, or in private, I don't know which, that she regrets that I am not there to back her up on the Delaware issue, and that she didn't say scared, I think she said reluctant to boldly advocate for the right thing because there's no one left to back her up. I don't feel sorry for her. She did this to herself. I feel sorry for Delaware. But no one is coming to Delaware's defense because they're scared of their own decision. The JC asked the author of the Bill of Particulars, Dr. Laura Epke, to identify timestamps from the 16 hours of video submitted that were most relevant to their case. She suggested instead that we sample the videos, make it unclear exactly where the respondents' concerns lay. I have a concern here. She mentions a statement by Dr. Laura Epke. I've never seen this response by Dr. Laura Epke. I wasn't receiving copies of everything in this case. I'm going to ask Dr. Ruert for this response from Dr. Laura Epke because I've never seen it. Naturally, criticism is unpleasant, perhaps more so when it comes from those closest to you, both personally and professionally. I certainly do not endorse the harsh way in which Ms. Harlos criticizes those with whom she disagrees. And she and I talked about this, and I'm going to tell you about this conversation in a moment. Should the convention return her to the LNC, I would advise her to seriously consider being more diplomatic, as mean words are not conducive to teamwork, which is what the LNC needs for maximum efficiency. LNC members are only human and will tend to discount the good works and suggestions of those who criticize them, especially when that criticism is delivered harshly. This is what I said to Dr. Ruert. Dr. Ruert, I agree with you. I normally am not this way. The reason I took the tact I did is because when the Libertarian Party will not stand against the COVID regime, all it deserves is what I said. And you want to know what Dr. Ruert said to me? Make that the cornerstone of your re-election campaign. I don't disagree with Dr. Ruert here. You will find no evidence of me speaking like this prior to the COVID regime. I did call Nick Sarwark corrupt. I didn't cuss about him. I felt I had to be harsh because people were dying. People were losing their businesses. And fucking Dr. Laura Epke said it wasn't our lane. If I am returned to the LNC, I absolutely would be more diplomatic because that is my style towards fellow LNC members. And if Angela McArdle is elected chair, I doubt I will have very much criticism, if any, ever to offer. But I make no apologies, none, for my harsh words to this LNC for the abortion of an effort it made with COVID, for its failure to even censure JBH to this date, for his deletion of the emails, for calling people Nazis who aren't. They deserved nothing less than what I said to them. And Dr. Ruert still would not condone, obviously, she's a wonderful, nice woman, my mean words, but she said she understood. This isn't my normal style. The majority opinion claims that the Secretary did indeed violate Section 2.01, subsection 5 of the Policy Manual. Even if this were true, it does not, in my opinion, rise to the level of cause for suspension unless it has created demonstrable harm. Hostile work environment. However, the respondents, I'm gonna try to find that harassment video. I'm gonna play it for you guys. The respondents do make the claim that Ms. Harlos created demonstrable harm. At the end of the Bill of Particulars, the LNC summarized their reason for suspending Ms. Harlos from her secretarial office. At the end of he should at least be censured Libertarian Revolution. The LNC has yet to censure him, but they removed me. At the end of the bill, the case is summarized as follows. In summary, the result of this chronic pattern of misconduct by Ms. Harlos has created a hostile work environment within the LNC, LP staff, and LP affiliates. What LP affiliates? No LP affiliates called for my removal. 4, I think it was, passed resolutions supporting me. Ms. Bill Yu interviewed LP staff, and all of them said none of them were going to resign over me. That's going to become important in a minute because I have something to tell you. Her actions have resulted in the loss of established LP members, LNC officers. See? Tell me that's not whistleblowing retaliation. LP employees and longtime donors. I have gained members and donors. She has recklessly and willfully harmed the perception of the party. No, you did, LNC. And has become a liability to the party's public image. Is that why libertarian movements from all over the world have written me in support? Her profiteering using her position has undermined the ethics and reputation as an all-volunteer body. Do you mean, Laura Epke, as a body in which only those who are affluent can serve? Her continuation as secretary of the LNC would be harmful not only to the LNC and its members, but to the party as a whole. Now let me tell you about LP's staff. Aaron Adams, in lobbying for votes, told other LNC members that half of staff would resign if they didn't suspend me. That is highly unethical. You never weaponize staff. I complained to Whitney. She did nothing about it. When she finally did something about it, she misread my complaint, and she thought I was saying that LP staff actually did threaten to resign. So she interviewed LP staff, and she wrote me to tell me that all of them told her that none of them were going to resign. So she just proved Aaron Adams a liar. I explained to Whitney that wasn't my complaint. Let's see if she does something about Aaron Adams' unethical behavior. She asked me what I wanted. I said, you can't remove Aaron, only her region can. I want her censured. They will not do a damn thing. There are screenshots that Ken Molman has to prove this. Let's see if something happens to Aaron Adams. Her and Whitney are thick as thieves. Nothing will happen. And Whitney unwittingly proved Aaron a liar. In the summation and hearing, the LNC indicated that Ms. Harlos has created a hostile work environment, blah, 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 blah. Most, if not all of this alleged misconduct apparently occurred outside of actual LNC meetings. All of it allegedly did. I've never misbehaved in a meeting, except potentially a couple times during my suspension hearing, and I apologized each time when my emotions got the better of me. Employers are prohibited by law from permitting a hostile work environment. The LNC was a hostile work environment for me. When Susan Hogarth kept intruding into my personal life, that was hostile. However, LNC members are not employees. Instead of being employed and paid, they are volunteers. They volunteer a considerable amount of their time to do LNC business. They essentially donate the money for the expenses associated with attending meetings, a non-trivial expense. Indeed, it is not unusual for LP members to refuse to stand for election to the LNC because the financial cost is significant. Others who are elected sometimes ask for help from other LP members to cover their expenses. Do you want to know how much it cost me my first year when I was LP Region 1 representative to serve? Over $10,000 out of my own pocket. I was able to do it back then. I had a job that I made very good money. I don't have that job now. So I ask for help. Who then is the employer who must prevent a hostile work environment in the LNC? The closest thing to an employer would be the membership, whose votes put the LNC members in office. They can fire an LNC member by not re-electing them. For what it's worth, I believe the bylaws should have a recall provision. I tried to put in a recall provision. It was shot down by the bylaws committee, who included Chuck Moulton and Alicia Matson. I'm going to publish my proposal in hopes that it will get adopted. I rather doubt that hostile work environment was in the mind of delegates when they gave the LNC the power to suspend an officer for cause. Indeed, some division is to be expected. We have regional reps because of the expectation that different regions will have competing interests, which can undoubtedly cause friction. I love what she says here. In my 3 terms on the LNC, I found that board to be the essence of a hostile working environment. Backroom deals were made by old-timers. It's still happening. But presented to the LNC by gullible newcomers to hide their true source. Libertarian Revolution, I'm going to disagree with you, but maybe we'll do this in another meeting. Another show. Mike Seebeck, thank you so much. And that will go towards my Massachusetts. I'm thanking Mike Seebeck, by the way. I'm going to stick this up here. I don't normally highlight super chats, but thank you. Yeah, I love how Mary said, this is how the LNC always is. Sorry, I went to the wrong thing here. Robert's Rules of Order were used to bludgeon those less knowledgeable into accepting unsavoring maneuvering. Mike and I do the show Cultivar ONR because of this. Petty conflicts seem to take up most of our precious meeting time. Officers violated their fiduciary responsibilities to attack minority representation on the LNC, with a majority and at times a supermajority willing to look the other way. Some of these violations were legally actionable, but the affected minority declined to prosecute to avoid bad publicity and cost to the party. The perpetrators were not disciplined because the affected minority fell into 3 of the unpopular categories listed below. Let me tell you all honestly, I could sue the LNC if I wanted to. Some of the things they've done to me in the back room, in the secret list, are so unconscionable. I was punished for saying I wanted an attorney to advise me. Not to sue them, just to advise me on my rights. I was punished for complaining that I was assaulted at the 2016 convention. I chose not to sue the LNC because it wouldn't harm the LNC. It would harm the members. Any damages I were to be awarded would come out of members' pockets, and I would never do that. Oh, chat overlay. Thank you. Thank you, Bob Blair. Thank you. But did I have legal recourse to sue the LNC? I most absolutely did. But I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do instead. I'm writing a book. I've written one book before. These LNC members will be immortalized. The book's not only going to be about this situation. I've got a lot to write about. The book actually is going to be about liberty. About the liberty I found after my divorce. Because a lot has happened to me that you guys don't know about. But this incident will be mentioned. And people 30 years from now will know how corrupt this LNC was. It's not the party. I love the party. I would never harm the party. I am attacking the LNC to protect the party. If I no longer believed in this party, I wouldn't harm it. I would simply walk away. I don't burn things down on my way out. That's not my style. I would just walk away and you wouldn't hear from me. Anyone who's claiming that I'm trying to harm the party can take a long walk off a short pier. I have done more and given more for this party than most people have. Libertarian against lynching. If dedicating super chats for travel to the LNC meeting in Boston is depressing super chats, I'm sorry. It's important that I be there. Let me explain why. Delaware will be making its case there. They will be nominating an LNC secretary there, and I do hope that one of the non-corrupt LNC members has the balls to nominate me, because I will be entitled to a nomination speech. Don't you guys want to hear that? I do. And I want to read that sentence from Mary Ruwart's opinion in public comment. If you guys would like to see that, help get me there. Yeah, that one thing about how can they face the state if they can't handle some nearly elderly pink-haired Colorado housewife? If I can bring the fear in them, what do they think the state's going to do? I'm a fucking pacifist, for God's sakes. But yeah, I'm going to read the best of Mary Ruwart in public comment. And if someone will nominate me, I get to do a nomination speech. Please help me get to Massachusetts. Actually, the plane tickets are very, very reasonable. I am utterly transparent in how I spend my money. Anyone who's donated to my campaign, if you don't know this, I have a spreadsheet with supporting receipts for every expense that I've had. The working title for my book right now is Indecorous. That's my working title right now. Okay, let's continue. I'm getting really sad right now, I'm sorry. Petty conflicts seem to take up most of our precious meeting time. Officers violated their fiduciary duties, their fiduciary responsibilities to attack minority representation on the LNC, with the majority and at times the supermajority willing to look the other way. Some of these violations were legally actionable. Oh, okay, we already did this, and I said why I wouldn't sue the LNC. In my terms on the LNC, members frequently made disparaging remarks about so-called povertarians who spent their time getting us ballot access or running state parties. These individuals were shamed by their better paid colleagues because they traded a life of affluence for a life of service to the cause. When, as a result, they couldn't afford a lifetime membership, they were ridiculed. By the way, anyone listening, if you are considering a life membership, please consider it still. The party is worth saving. And I would like to ask you something if you're considering a life membership. Would you give me the honor of pinning you? It will irritate all the right people. And I would love to do it. Particularly in Massachusetts. If anyone is going to Massachusetts and is considering becoming a life member, would you like to do some performance art with me? Declare it during public comment and ask for me to pin you in front of the entire LNC. It would be my honor. Continuing. Christians were thought to be illogical, likely due to the judgmental influence of atheistic Ayn Rand, who was instrumental in bringing old-timers like myself into the libertarian movement. Radicals were also condemned. I'm gonna do another show on what Laura Epke said about me that shows this was about me being a radical. As a moderate Republican light image was thought to be preferable to voters. A large percentage of the LNC members that I served with fell in the category of affluent, atheistic, and Republican light advocates, and that includes Alicia Matson. What I don't believe Mary Ruwart says here is that those same people slandered her horribly in 2008. And she's a hero for sticking with the party. She has a chapter in her book on tough questions. The chapter is written awkwardly. I think even she would admit that. But those people took that chapter and slandered Mary Ruwart and said that she was an advocate of child pornography. I remember when I first joined the party, I went to something called LPEX. It was held in Nevada. Some of you may remember this. I was not an anarchist yet. I just dyed my hair pink. It's a while ago. The first people I met were Alicia Matson and Aaron Starr, who told me that anarchists had no place in the party. I was not yet an anarchist. I didn't even understand what it was. And foolishly, I agreed with them because I didn't understand. And Aaron Starr waxed poetic about what a great candidate Wayne Allen Root was and showed me his website, Root for America, and told me all about Mary Ruwart. I didn't know her then. But you want to know what else Aaron Starr said to me? Because I was trying to get on the platform committee at that time, and I'll admit it, it was to get rid of the abortion plank. I no longer believe the platform committee should have anything to do with the abortion plank, and I vow any votes that I have on the platform committee, I will never support doing anything to the abortion plank. I believe the delegates already have that power with the token system. But however, back then, I did not feel that way. And Aaron Starr promised to help me. But you want to know what Aaron Starr said to me? And I will take a lie detector test for this if anyone ever wants to deny it. Aaron Starr looked me right in the eye and said, "Why do you want to be on platform? Bylaws is where the power is." I was so creeped out by that I went home to my husband and said, "There's something going on with that guy." I was so creeped out by that statement. Bylaws is where the power is. I am not lying. And if Aaron or Alicia want to claim I'm lying, let's mutually agree on someone to administer a lie detector, and I will take it publicly. And if it shows that I'm lying, I'll pay for it. If it shows I'm not, you'll pay for it. I'm not lying. Anyway, that has bothered me ever since then, and that's 7-something years ago. Wayne will tell you, the minute I came home, I told him about that statement and how deeply, deeply disturbed I was. But I'll say this, Alicia was super, super nice. Except for the anarchist comment. I don't even know how I got on this. Oh, the Republican light thing. So back in 2008, right now we have a leftist problem in the party. But back in 2008, we had a Republican light problem in the party. Go to the Wayback Machine and look at the LP website from 2008. It's like all full of eagles and flags and shit. Oh my God, it just grosses me out. Yeah, he is right, I guess, for LP power as it is. But do you say that to a new person? I mean, I was LPEX. I became an anarchist 10 months after I was in the party. Me and Lily went to LPEX. I don't know if she was chair yet. So I probably was in the party maybe 5-6 months. Would you tell somebody brand new in the party that? Would you ever say that to somebody? That bylaws is where the power is at? But I swear, I'm trying to think of the thing I value most. I swear on my own integrity that he said that to me right in front of Alicia. I'll never, ever forget it. All right, continuing. During my 2008-2010 term on the LNC, I documented backroom deals, actionable violations I find fiduciary duty swept under the rug. The amicus brief that the JC received from Justin O'Donnell suggests that not much has changed, and it hasn't. Please read what Justin O'Donnell said. I might do it as a separate show. It shows that Richard Longstreth betrayed me long before I thought he did. Mr. O'Donnell chose not to seek re-election to the LNC after 2 terms due to the toxic work environment and petty interpersonal power struggles on the LNC. His brief, taken at face value, also indicates that some members of the LNC have been looking for ways to get rid of the appellant, me, and those with opposing ideological positions for some time. To accuse the appellant of creating a hostile work environment is, in my experience, the pot calling the kettle black. Oh my God, is that so true? I'm surprised. I don't think she noticed Richard Longstreth's email to me that I submitted as evidence, in which he admitted that these same people were trying to remove me from the LNC since I was elected. Mike, I have a favor to ask you. I thank you very much for your offer to do my nomination speech, and I still may take you up on it, though I do think unless Mary does it, I'm going to be doing it myself. But those of you, including you, Mike, mostly you, Mike, you're my best friend, who would like to do a speech for me, will you please record it and I'll put it on my channel so I can include it in my campaign? So that's the favor I'm asking of you, Mike. Harming the Libertarian Party. The summary in the Bill of Particulars asserts that the Secretary's actions have resulted in the loss, emphasis mine, of established LP members, LNC officers, LP employees, and longtime donors. If this is indeed the case, documentation should be readily available. I don't understand the question mark. What I'm asking you, Mike, is can you record, and you could even do it here at my more professional studio if you'd like, a video for me, an endorsement video that I can put on my channel and use in my campaign? I'm extending that offer to everyone, but I'm extending it to you first and foremost as my best friend. For example, the respondents could have offered examples such as the following. An anonymized list of donors who stated verbally or in writing that they would no longer contribute to the party because of the appellant. An anonymized list of employees who left because of Ms. Harlos. I can name one. Gideon Oakes left because of me. He and I are still friends. An anonymized list of LNC officers who have been lost because of Ms. Harlos. You don't need an anonymized list. There's only been one. And that's JBH. Mike, we can talk about that. Just considering the circumstances, I think the delegates want to hear from me. I'm also considering potentially asking Ken Molman because he's vice chair. Let's talk strategy. Oh, okay. Got it, Mike. Thank you. The JC might have been asked to vet this list with its particulars under executive session to preserve confidentiality and verify the respondents' claims. By the way, you want to know who else gave a nomination speech for me in 2018? Susan Hogarth. But I suspect those who were lost would have come forward willingly as we were considering Ms. Harlos's appeal. As near as I can tell, no such documentation has been provided by the respondents. The respondent summary asserts that the appellant has harmed the perception, presumably the public perception, of the party as well, but has provided no comments from the public to back up their assertion. The assertion may be true, but supporting evidence appears to be lacking. The summary states that the Secretary's profiteering has undermined the ethics and reputation of the LNC as an all-volunteer body. Section 6.2 and 6.4 of the Moulton opinion deals with concerns that by asking for donations to support her personal expenses, Ms. Harlos has an actual conflict of interest. She is accused of stirring up controversy in order to increase her viewership and subsequent donations. However, stirring up controversy is not necessarily a bad thing. Even JC members who voted for the respondents did not all agree that Mrs. Harlos's actions constituted an actual conflict of interest. Presumably, an LP officer in financial straits should be able to ask for help from her colleagues without reprisal. Even if one sides with the respondents, does asking for money when an officer is in difficult financial straits constitute demonstrable harm to the LP? If so, I saw no evidence of this harm other than the unsupported assertion that the ethics and reputation of the LNC as an all-volunteer body has been undermined. The whistleblower defense. The appellant claimed that the motions to remove her resulted from her uncovering malfeasance by the LNC chair, Mr. Bishop Henchman, during the fight between factions of the New Hampshire affiliate. That's not all. People haven't understood this. That wasn't my only whistleblower. It was COVID whistleblowing as well. However, as indicated in Mr. O'Bonnell's brief, plans to suspend, replace the secretary predated this conflict. I also understand that Joe Bishop Henchman had planned to resign from the LNC prior to the investigation into New Hampshire by the LNC-appointed investigative committee, which included Ms. Harlos. No, I voted NODA on the investigative committee. So I didn't appoint the investigative committee. I don't know if Dr. Ruert knew that. These factors argue against her claim of whistleblower status. Dr. Ruert probably doesn't know this, but Richard Longstreth, who is very good friends with Bishop Henchman, said he opposed these prior attempts until New Hampshire happened. I don't think she, there was way too many facts to digest. Obviously, I know my case better than anybody, and I can't expect everyone else to know it as well. And just because people had been planning to do it before, that doesn't mitigate my whistleblower status if this is the situation they chose to exploit. That said, the timing of the actual motions to suspend were apparently triggered by Mr. Bishop Henchman's desire to suspend the secretary prior to his leaving. The timing coincides with the LNC's investigative committee findings, of which Ms. Harlos was a part. 2 motions to suspend her were ruled out of order by the then acting chair and had no bill of particulars associated with them. Only when the 3rd motion was made with a bill of particulars did the suspension motion pass. I love this sentence. Are you listening, Richard Longstreth? And everyone else. I am appalled that multiple LNC members who wished to suspend the secretary felt comfortable doing so without a formal charge of any kind. Clearly, the timing of these motions to suspend obscure the issue of whether these motions were indeed due, at least in part, to appellant's investigative actions and/or Mr. Bishop Henchman's desire to oust the secretary. More concerning from my perspective is that at least some of the LNC members have been trying to suspend Ms. Harlos for some time and should therefore have presented more compelling documentation. NAP violations. What page are we on? We're almost done. The so-called pledge that LP members signed was indeed intended to deflect any governmental concerns that the LP supported violent overthrow. However, the definition of the NAP philosophy and its application has been detailed by many authors, including myself, or myself included. Perhaps I shouldn't have been surprised to hear that respondents felt that Ms. Harlos's mean words rose to the standard of a NAP violation. After all, some LNC members with whom I have served over the years have tried to eliminate remain the party of principle as we grow as one of our key goals. Those who supported this elimination have repeatedly claimed that the LNC should not educate new members in its principles, but instead leave that crucial mission to the advocates for self-government or other libertarian nonprofits. As a result of ignoring internal education, as many as half of our candidates do not seem to recognize, or at least not promote, the NAP as the foundation of our platform. Does our leadership have a misunderstanding of the NAP as well? If the LP doesn't remain the party of principle, what good will it do to elect libertarians? Neither the Moulton opinion or the Mattson opinion endorse the respondent's position on the NAP. No one should construe the JC's decision as such an endorsement. One thing I will add, though, Mr. Moulton said the entire LNC that voted for me endorsed it. Summary. The respondents made multiple accusations concerning Ms. Harlos's conduct that were not well documented, supported, or do not rise to what I consider justifiable cause. Was this due to a deficient presentation on the part of the respondents or a case lacking in substance? It's the latter. Because I cannot easily differentiate between the two, I cannot in good conscience support their case. Should we even suspend officers for anything other than criminal activity, failure to perform the duties of their office, or demonstrable harm to the LP? These are questions that the delegates to the next convention will hopefully resolve by addressing what they consider cause. The amicus briefs that the JC received ran roughly 4-1 in favor of Ms. Harlos. Given such strong support, it would not surprise me if she is returned to the LNC. Should that happen, I hope that she will make her critiques of her colleagues with more objectivity and less profanity when disagreements arise. Dr. Ruhr, I suggest that you listen to my videos. One thing I do get compliments for is objectivity and fairness when it's due. And I agree with you on the profanity, but I felt it justified in light of COVID. The respondents have claimed that Ms. Harlos has made them unable to conduct business. If this was truly the case, my expectation is that the LNC will now go all out and fight against the most tyrannical threat of our time, vaccine mandates. No, they won't. And I'm going to start a series of what the LNC should be doing right now. Because I had an entire plan for already against the next mandate, and they removed me before I could present it. She goes on with a little bit of rah-rah later on that doesn't have to do with me. There's an appendix. What's this appendix? Oh, my supplemental exhibits. I want to read Justin O'Donnell's supplemental exhibit since it's right here. Cam, that's the criticism I get from people, is that I'm too fair at times, so I try to be. I am profane sometimes. I admit it. I don't think Dr. Ruhr realizes that. Okay, Justin O'Donnell. I'd like to read this to you. Dr. Ruhr, I'm sending this email to you. Let me make this a little bigger, if I can. I can't. I need my glasses. I'm sending this email to you in hopes that you and other members of the Judiciary Committee may find its information valuable in considering the appeal of Secretary Harlos' suspension from the LNC. I believe this motion has been in the planning stages since long before any of the attempts were made by members of the LNC to remove Ms. Harlos, and I believe their motivations negatively color the righteousness of their actions. Mr. Longstreth and other members of the board have publicly claimed that the motion was a recent development and based purely on the conduct of Ms. Harlos. However, this is simply untrue. I had served as the Region 8 representative to the LNC for the previous 2 terms and chose not to seek re-election due to what I perceived as a toxic work environment and petty interpersonal power struggles hindering the ability of the LNC to conduct the business of the party. In hindsight, I do recognize my own fault for some of these actions, as I had become so frustrated with the disagreement of the board that I had begun working with Joe Bishop Henchman and Richard Longstreth on a plan to replace members of the board as early as the fall of 2019. In hindsight, I regret my participation in these plans, but history cannot be changed. But at every stage of our planning in 2019, Richard Longstreth was insistent that he would replace CAH as secretary and do a better job than her. He and Mr. Bishop Henchman were the ringleaders of a group that met regularly to discuss options on how to remove ideological opposition from the LNC in the event that convention elections did not go their way. Present in the last of these meetings, held in Orlando, following the fall 2019 LNC meeting aside from myself, were also then LNC members Elizabeth Van Horn, Aaron Adams, Paige Sexton, and several non-LNC members Andy Craig and Ethan Bishop Henchman. We had also approached Ms. Bill Yu about running for vice chair as part of a slate and informed her of our plans. While this testimony may not be conclusively damning to any individual, I believe it should highlight the hypocrisy and dishonesty of some involved in these proceedings and tend credence to the fact that this was a corrupt backroom proceeding and was in the planning stages for years before carried out on whimsical charges. I've attached a screenshot of a public Facebook post where I called out Mr. Longstreth for his lies and hypocrisy. I've pointed that out in the post I made about Richard Longstreth, where he lied and said he never wanted to be secretary. I would appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So there you go, everybody. I am so appreciative of Dr. Ruert's opinion. Mike and I will go over the parliamentary arguments made by D. Frank Robinson. I have several asks for you before we go. Number 1, please highlight that paragraph in Dr. Moulton's opinion and write to the 11 LNC members asking them if they agree with every single charge against me, including violating the NAP. And please blind copy me on that. I am going to file an objection with the Judicial Committee about that statement and ask them to consider rescission. They won't, but I'm going to ask them because it's incorrect. My second ask. In the low bar, there is a link to my campaign page. Again, any contributions received today via Super Chat or via the campaign page will be used to send me to Massachusetts, where I promise I will read that section of Mary Ruert's dissent into the public record and give a nomination speech if I'm nominated for secretary. Oh, let me do his abstention. Sorry, Mike. Where is it? I must have skipped it. I'll do that before I go. But let me finish my asks. What was my third one? I don't remember my third one. Oh, my third one. If you support my campaign, will you please do a campaign endorsement video for me that I can use on my YouTube channel and in my campaign? Those are my 3 asks. Let me find the cowardly abstention. Oh, here it is. Okay. Opinion by Tom Arnold. In the matter of the appeal of Ms. Harlos to the Judicial Committee concerning her suspension, I abstain. I cannot in good conscience take a side in this matter. Then you're a coward. I hope that the delegates that elected me to this office find my reasoning as representative of their trust. I elected you, I do not. As to the LNC, I find that while the process and cause might be considered valid, the bill of particulars was sloppily done and did not conclusively present the case. Then you should have found for me. Further, the behavior of several members of the LNC were just as disruptive to the work environment. The appellant has offered a huge body of information in her defense, and while the Judicial Committee has gleaned much from it, my decision to not support her reinstatement is based both on her actions prior to suspension and testimony in the hearing. I found many of her claims concerning the LNC and rebuttal of the cause for suspension disingenuous. Name them. And cannot support her appeal. Your opinion of me is, how do you put it? Irrelevant. If they didn't conclusively present their case, you should find for me. As to what was disingenuous, don't be a fucking coward and write me and tell me. I'll write you and ask you. We'll see if you respond. There is much I could say, but refrain for the sake of brevity. I have several suggestions to the LNC, blah, 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 blah. peace, love, and liberty, Tom Arnold. Okay, thank you for reminding me of that, Mike. Tom and I used to be friends. Not that we were enemies prior to this, and we're not enemies now, but we ceased to be friends long before this. But let me tell you something, if you're a friend of mine. If I ever think you're doing something wrong or disingenuous, you will hear it personally from me before you ever hear me say it publicly. If Tom Arnold had a problem with me, he never ever said a word to me. No one who has been my friend for any amount of time will think that I wouldn't talk to you personally before talking about you publicly. Doesn't mean I won't talk about you publicly, but you will always hear it from me first. That's how Aaron Adams and I stopped being friends. We got into an argument a couple years ago where she went after me publicly when we were friends, and we ended up making up, and I told her my problem with her was not that she had a disagreement with me. Mike and I, who's my best friend, have had disagreements. It was that she went after me publicly without telling me privately first. We had a falling out again over this whole thing because she went after me publicly. I still don't know what her issues were about New Hampshire. I don't care if my friends have disagreements with me, but have the courtesy to come to me privately first. Okay, guys, I'm exhausted, and I'm starting work tomorrow. And I'm deeply sad. I do need campaign whips and donations for my campaign. I appreciate all of your support. November is my month to be salty about this whole thing. When November is done, I'm done. I'm giving myself this month. I probably won't need all of this month. I've got other things to do. And I'm going to close with one thought. And I'm trying to think of how to word this properly. Because something Susan Hogarth said really bothered me. And I've mentioned this before, so you know it did really bother me. Though I think it was a really catty, bitchy thing of her to say. It's just not true. There's catty, bitchy things you could say about me that are probably true. She said the reason Ms. Harlos is so upset about this is because her whole identity is wrapped up in the LP. A, that's not true. I do other things. But let's pretend it was. That isn't why I'm upset. I am upset because I worked my ass off for this position. I earned it, fair and square. I've traveled to more state conventions, I think, than anybody, besides presidential candidates. I did the work. I earned this. And you jealous, pathetic, vengeful bitches took it away. That's why I'm upset. I have an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. And the devil on this shoulder is saying, I hope this happens to you one day. And the angel on the other is saying, forgive them. I haven't yet reached the point of forgiveness. But I have reached the point of repudiating the devil on this shoulder. But I have a Christian opinion that most Christians don't agree with. I don't believe that forgiveness is unconditional. I don't think the Bible teaches that forgiveness is unconditional. God's forgiveness isn't unconditional. You have to repent. But I have to tell you, if, say, I'm going to give the example of the person who I think is most redeemable out of this whole group. Let's say John Phillips came up to me and repented and asked for my forgiveness. I'm not at a point where I could forgive, even if asked for. And I'm praying that I get to that point. And yeah, Diana, I saw how I dealt with that earlier. Whitney's full of crap. The bylaws do not require replacement. All the bylaws say is that the LNC replaces if it happens. We have precedent for this in the past where the treasurer wasn't replaced. But anyway, good night, everyone. I thank you all for your support. And I appreciate prayers if you're a praying person. And I will leave you all. How long has this been? It's 11:20. 3 hours? That's about a typical stream for me. And I've done really good. I only cursed a couple times. But I'm super surprised that no one wanted to come online. I invited all the haters. Cowards didn't come. I'm not surprised. They won't face me. All right. Good night, everyone.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business, not because they want to